The call from Chloe's school counselor came right as I was pulling a batch of chocolate chip cookies from the oven. Jamie's favorite after-school treat would have to wait. My hands trembled as I set down the hot baking sheet and grabbed my phone. "My name is Mallory, and that call changed everything." "Mrs. Quinn? This is Barbara Mitchell from Riverside High." Her voice carried that carefully measured tone that makes any parent's stomach drop. "We need to discuss an incident involving Chloe." I closed my eyes, bracing myself. "What kind of incident?" "We've discovered some concerning social media posts. Chloe has been targeting another student, a girl with severe anxiety issues. The messages are quite cruel." The kitchen suddenly felt too warm, too small. Through the window, I could see Jamie on his swing set, waiting for his sister to come home like always. He idolized Chloe, despite how cold she'd been to both of us lately. "How bad are we talking?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. "Bad enough that the other students' parents are considering legal action." Barbara paused. "They have screenshots." My mind raced to Ethan, my husband, who still saw his 16-year-old daughter as the sweet little girl who used to wear fairy wings to breakfast. He'd never believe this without proof. "I'll need to see these messages," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "And I'll talk to her father right away." "Of course. I've already emailed them to you." Another pause. "Mrs. Quinn, given Chloe's previous difficulties adjusting, perhaps the family could consider counseling." I almost laughed. 3 years of trying to get Chloe to accept me as her stepmother, and now this stranger was suggesting family therapy? But before I could respond, I heard the front door slam. "Mom, is Chloe home yet?" Jamie called out. "Just a minute, sweetie." I turned back to the phone. "Thank you for letting me know, Mrs. Mitchell. I'll handle this." But as I hung up, I caught sight of Chloe through the kitchen window, strutting up the driveway with that familiar look of disdain. She had no idea what was coming, or maybe she did and simply didn't care. Either way, this wasn't just about mean girls and social media anymore. This was about protecting both my children, the sweet 7-year-old who deserved a better role model, and the troubled teenager who seemed determined to destroy herself and anyone who tried to help her. I took a deep breath and opened my email. Whatever those screenshots revealed, I knew one thing for certain. This time, something had to change. The screenshots made my blood run cold. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my laptop while Jamie and Chloe's voices drifted in from the living room. For once, they weren't arguing. Chloe was actually helping him with his math homework. The sound of their temporary peace made what I was reading even harder to bear. "What a pathetic little crybaby," Chloe had written. "Maybe if you weren't such a freak, your dad wouldn't have left too." There were dozens more messages, each crueler than the last. The target was Sarah Chun, whose anxiety was so severe she'd missed most of 8th grade. Now a freshman, she'd finally returned to school, only to face this. The front door opened and Ethan's footsteps approached. I quickly closed the laptop. "Hey, everything okay?" he asked, loosening his tie. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Before I could answer, Doris burst through the back door without knocking, carrying a casserole dish. "I brought dinner since I assumed you'd be too busy with your book club to cook tonight." I bit back a retort. My mother-in-law had never forgiven me for missing last month's family dinner because of a work emergency. "Actually, we need to discuss something about Chloe." "What about me?" Chloe appeared in the doorway, Jamie trailing behind her like a shadow. "Jamie, honey, why don't you go play in your room for a bit?" I suggested. But Chloe was helping me. "Now, please." As Jamie trudged upstairs, Doris settled into a chair like she was preparing for battle. "What's this about?" I opened the laptop again, turning it toward Ethan. His face darkened as he scrolled through the messages. "These can't be real," he muttered. "They're not," Chloe snapped. "Someone's obviously trying to frame me." "The school has proof they came from your accounts," I said quietly. "Of course you'd believe them over me." Chloe's voice cracked. "You've been waiting for an excuse to make me look bad." "That's not." "Well, teenagers can be cruel sometimes," Doris interrupted. "I'm sure this Sarah girl will get over it. When I was young." "This isn't about you, Mother," Ethan cut in, his voice sharp. "Chloe, we raised you better than this." "You raised me." "She didn't raise me at all." Chloe jabbed a finger at me. "And now she's trying to turn you against me, just like she did with Jamie." From upstairs came the sound of a door closing. Jamie had been listening to everything. "Nobody's turning anyone against you," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "But there have to be consequences." "The only consequence," Chloe said, her eyes cold, "is that now everyone will see what kind of stepmother you really are." She stormed out, leaving me with Ethan's silence and Doris's judgmental stare. but it was the quiet sound of Jamie crying upstairs that broke my heart the most. I wasn't snooping, not really. I was just gathering Chloe's laundry when her phone buzzed on her desk. The message preview caught my eye. "Miss you, baby girl. Your real mom loves you more than they ever could." My hands shook as I picked up the phone. The lock screen showed dozens of notifications from someone saved as Mom Love, all from the past month. Rebecca, the woman who'd walked out on Chloe and Ethan 8 years ago without so much as a goodbye note. The bedroom door creaked behind me. I spun around to find Chloe standing there, her face twisted with fury. "How dare you?" she hissed. "How long has she been contacting you? That's none of your business." She snatched the phone from my hand. "You had no right." "I have every right when it affects this family," I said. "Does your father know?" Chloe's laugh was bitter. "You mean, have I told him his precious new wife is a total control freak?" "Not yet. Your mother abandoned you, Chloe." She made a mistake." Chloe's voice cracked. "At least she admits it. She wants to make things right." The pieces suddenly clicked into place. Chloe's recent attitude changes, the secretive phone calls, the way she'd been pushing everyone away. "Is that what she told you? That she wants to reconnect? She loves me. She understands me. Like she understood you when she left without saying goodbye." The words came out sharper than I intended. "Better than you understand me." Chloe's eyes filled with tears. "You think just because you married my dad and had Jamie you can replace her? You can't. You never will." Heavy footsteps on the stairs made us both turn. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his face grave. I heard shouting. "What's going on?" "Ask your wife," Chloe spat. "She's been going through my private messages." "Rebecca's been contacting her," I said quietly. "For weeks." The color drained from Ethan's face. "What?" "She wants to see me," Chloe said. "And you can't stop me." "Like hell I can't." Ethan's voice shook. "After what she did." "What she did?" Chloe screamed. "What about what you did? Replacing her with the first woman who smiled at you." She shoved past us both, but not before I caught a glimpse of her screen. A new message from Rebecca. "Don't let them keep us apart. I have a plan." The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan stood frozen, staring at the space where his daughter had been. And I realized with growing dread that this wasn't just about teenage rebellion anymore. Rebecca was back, and she was playing a much more dangerous game than any of us had imagined. The kitchen table had become our war room. Ethan paced while I sat staring at printouts of Rebecca's messages to Chloe, each one more manipulative than the last. "We could try family counseling," I suggested. Ethan stopped pacing. "She won't go. Mother's already convinced her we're overreacting." Of course she had. I rubbed my temples, fighting a headache. "Your mother doesn't know what Rebecca's capable of. And you do." His tone made me look up sharply. "I've spent 3 years watching Chloe struggle because of what that woman did to her." I pushed back my chair. "While your mother spent those same years blaming me for trying to help." The doorbell rang before Ethan could respond. Through the window, I spotted Harold's truck in the driveway. Great. The whole Quinn family council was assembling. Harold entered without waiting for an invitation, his expression grim. Doris called. "Said you two are trying to keep Chloe from her mother." "Her mother abandoned her," Ethan snapped. "And now she wants to make amends." Harold's voice softened. "Sometimes people deserve second chances, son. Not people who message their teenage daughter about running away together," I said, sliding one of the printouts across the table. Harold's face darkened as he read. "Jesus Christ. There's more." I started, but Jamie's voice from the stairs cut me off. "Dad? Is Chloe coming home soon?" We all turned. Jamie stood in his pajamas, clutching the stuffed dragon Chloe had given him last Christmas. "Soon, buddy," Ethan said. "Go back to bed." But I heard her crying in her room before she left. My heart stopped. "When was this?" "After dinner. She was on the phone saying she'd meet someone tonight." Ethan was already running upstairs. I followed, my pulse pounding. Chloe's room was empty, her window open. On her desk lay a note. "Don't try to stop me. Mom's the only one who really wants me." "Call the police," Harold said from behind us. But I was already pulling up the tracking app I'd installed on Chloe's phone after the cyberbullying incident. The one she didn't know about. The dot pulsed at the bus station downtown. "I know where she is," I said, grabbing my keys. "But we have to hurry." "I'm coming with you," Ethan said. "No." I touched his arm. "Stay with Jamie. He needs one of us here." "But..." "Ethan, please. I know you don't trust my judgment about Chloe, but trust this. Rebecca won't hurt her if I'm the one who shows up. She'll want the audience." Understanding dawned in his eyes. After all, What better revenge on a stepmother than stealing her stepdaughter away? I just prayed I'd get there in time to stop her. The bus station's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across empty benches. Rebecca wasn't here. Neither was Chloe. The tracking app showed her phone still present, but when I found it, it was tucked behind a vending machine, deliberately left behind. My phone buzzed. "Doris, have you found her yet?" Her voice dripped with accusation. "This wouldn't have happened if you'd just." I ended the call, my hands shaking. A text from Ethan followed. "Police are here. Coming to station." But something caught my eye, a familiar barista behind the station's coffee counter. The same one who'd served Chloe and her friends countless times at the mall. "Excuse me." I approached her. "Have you seen a teenage girl, long dark hair, wearing a green hoodie?" She hesitated. "The one with the lady in the red coat? They left about 20 minutes ago." The woman said something about catching the train to Chicago. The train station was 15 minutes away. I ran to my car, tires squealing as I pulled out of the parking lot. The radio crackled with a weather warning. Severe storms approaching. Perfect. Another call from Doris. This time I answered on speaker. "Harold just told me what those messages really said," she started. "I had no idea Rebecca was planning to kidnap her own daughter." My voice sounded strange, even to me. "While you were busy blaming me for everything, did you ever stop to ask why Chloe was so angry? Why she needed to hurt people?" Silence. "Because the person who should have loved her most just walked away. And now she's back to do it again." Doris's voice cracked. "I thought I was protecting her." "No, you were punishing me. And now Chloe might pay the price." Lightning flashed ahead as I pulled into the train station parking lot. Through sheets of rain I spotted them, Chloe's green hoodie, Rebecca's red coat. They were heading for platform 3. My phone buzzed again. "Ethan. Police tracking Rebecca's credit cards. Don't engage, wait for backup." But I could see Rebecca's hand gripping Chloe's arm too tightly, could see the fear beneath my stepdaughter's defiant expression. The same fear I'd seen in Sarah Chen's eyes when we'd discussed the cyberbullying. Sometimes hurt people, and sometimes they just need someone to stop the cycle. I stepped out into the rain, my voice carrying across the platform. "Chloe!" They both turned. In that moment, as thunder cracked overhead, I saw something shift in Chloe's eyes, recognition maybe. Or realization. Rebecca's grip tightened. "She's not yours to save." "No," I agreed, moving closer. "She has to make that choice herself." The rain pounded against the platform as Rebecca's grip on Chloe's arm tightened. Police sirens wailed in the distance, but too far away. The Chicago-bound train screamed into the station, drowning out everything except Rebecca's laugh. "You really think you can play hero?" She pulled Chloe closer. "Tell her, sweetie. Tell her about your real plans." Chloe's eyes met mine, defiant yet frightened. "I'm getting married." The world tilted sideways. "What?" "His name is Marcus. He's 28, and he understands me." Chloe's chin lifted. "Mom's going to help us be together." Rebecca's smile was pure victory. "Marcus has connections in Chicago. No one can stop them once they're married." My phone buzzed, Ethan again. I ignored it, taking a step closer. "Chloe, listen to me. Whatever she's promised you." "You don't get it," Chloe cut in. "Marcus loves me. He doesn't try to fix me or make me be nice to stupid Jamie or... He's grooming you." The words exploded out before I could stop them. "Your mother's helping a predator." Rebecca's hand cracked across my face. The sound echoed across the platform as the train doors hissed open. "You're lying," Chloe whispered, but her voice shook. "Marcus says people wouldn't understand." "Of course they say that." I touched my stinging cheek. "That's what predators always say." "Shut up." Rebecca yanked Chloe toward the train. "We're leaving." But Chloe resisted, just slightly. "Mom, you said Marcus was coming to meet us." "Change of plans." Rebecca's voice hardened. "Get on the train, Chloe." I saw it then. The moment doubt crept into Chloe's eyes. The same doubt I'd seen when she'd bullied Sarah Chun, right before the guilt hit. "He's not coming, is he?" Chloe's voice was very small. "There is no Marcus." Rebecca's face twisted. "There are plenty of Marcuses in Chicago. Better ones. Richer ones. Now get on the damn train." The police sirens were closer now. Through the rain, I saw Ethan running across the parking lot. But Rebecca saw him too. She shoved Chloe hard, sending her stumbling onto the train, then jumped on after her. "No!" I lunged forward, but the doors were already closing. The last thing I saw was Chloe's face pressed against the window, her palm flat against the glass. Not reaching for her mother, but reaching for me. The train pulled away, taking my stepdaughter into the storm with a woman who'd sell her own child to the highest bidder. And all I could do was stand there, soaked and shaking, as Ethan's footsteps pounded up behind me. "They're gone," I whispered. "I let them take her." The Chicago police found them at a rundown motel near the station. I arrived just as they were leading Rebecca away in handcuffs, her red coat now a splash of blood against the gray morning. "Where is she?" I asked the officer. He nodded toward room 115. "She won't talk to anyone." Through the open door, I saw Chloe sitting on the bed's edge, still wearing yesterday's clothes, her phone in pieces on the floor. When I stepped inside, she didn't look up. He wasn't real. Her voice was hollow. None of them were real. She was selling my photos to men online. The words hit like physical blows. I sat beside her, careful to leave space between us. Did she? I couldn't finish the question. No, but she was going to. Chloe's hands twisted in her lap. "There was a buyer coming tonight. She said he'd take care of me better than you or Dad ever could." A sob caught in her throat. I reached for her, but she flinched away. I should have known. Just like I should have known better than to hurt Sarah Chun. She finally looked at me, eyes red-rimmed. "Why didn't I know better?" "Because she's your mother." I kept my voice gentle. "We want to believe the people who should love us most. She never loved me." Chloe's laugh was bitter. But I kept trying to prove I was worth loving. Even if it meant hurting other people. Even if it meant hurting Jamie. "Chloe." I saw his face when I left. The words tumbled out. He was crying, wasn't he? Because his big sister abandoned him, just like... She broke off, shoulders shaking. This time when I reached for her, she didn't pull away. She collapsed against me, years of pain finally breaking free. "I'm sorry," she whispered against my shoulder. "I'm so sorry." Through the window, I could see Ethan talking to the officers, his face drawn with worry. Beyond him, the first hints of sunrise painted the sky pink. The same color as the walls we'd painted Chloe's nursery together when I first moved in, before resentment and fear had poisoned everything. "We can't go back," I said softly. "But we can go forward. Together." Chloe pulled back, wiping her eyes. "How?" "After everything I've done. The same way Sarah Chun went back to school after everything that happened to her." I squeezed her hand. "One day at a time, with people who actually love you by your side." She nodded slowly, then reached for her shattered phone. "I need to call Sarah. And Jamie. I need to make things right." "We will," I promised. "All of us." 3 months later, I stood in our kitchen watching Jamie and Chloe decorate cookies together. Christmas music played softly in the background, and the afternoon sun caught the silver charm bracelet on Chloe's wrist. A gift from Sarah Chun after their first counseling session together. "You're doing it wrong," Jamie giggled, reaching for the frosting bag. "The snowman needs a scarf." "Oh, really?" Chloe dabbed icing on his nose. "And I suppose you're the cookie decorating expert?" Their laughter filled the kitchen, healing old wounds I'd thought would never close. On the refrigerator, Chloe's latest therapy assignment hung proudly. A letter to her younger self, talking about forgiveness and second chances. Beside it was a crayon drawing from Jamie, his whole family, including his big sister, holding hands under a rainbow. Doris appeared in the doorway, carrying a casserole dish. This time she knocked. "I thought you might need help with dinner," she said softly. Then, noticing the cookies, "Oh, those look lovely, Chloe." Chloe tensed slightly, but managed a small smile. "Thanks, Grandma. Want to help?" The surprise on Doris's face was worth everything. As she joined them at the counter, I slipped outside to the back porch where Ethan was grilling. "Everything okay?" he asked, pulling me close. "Better than okay." I watched through the window as 3 generations of Quinns decorated cookies together. Though we got another letter from Rebecca today. His jaw tightened. What does she want now? The same thing, forgiveness, visitation rights. I shook my head. Chloe threw it away without opening it. Her choice. Completely. I smiled. She said she's learned the difference between people who love you and people who say they love you. Inside, Jamie's squeal of delight drew our attention. Chloe had lifted him onto the counter, so he could reach the sprinkles better. Doris steadied him, her usual criticism replaced with genuine warmth. "You know what Chloe told me yesterday?" I said quietly. "She's thinking about starting a support group at school for kids dealing with family trauma. Said sometimes the best way to heal is to help others heal too." Ethan squeezed my hand, and I leaned into him, remembering that rainy night at the train station. How close we'd come to losing everything. The back door opened, and Chloe stuck her head out. "Hey, we saved you guys some cookies to decorate. But hurry up before Jamie eats all the good frosting colors." "Coming, sweetheart," Ethan called. As we headed inside, I caught a glimpse of something new on the refrigerator, a college brochure for social work, dog-eared and highlighted. Next to Jamie's rainbow family drawing, it looked like hope.
My name is Kayla, and I graduated from college 5 years ago. I left home and began living independently as soon as I started college. My father, who was rather eccentric, had always hoped for a son. When I was born a girl, he made no effort to hide his disappointment, often expressing his dissatisfaction with my mother. Throughout my childhood, my father never accepted me and rarely showed me affection. My memories of him are marred by his cold demeanor and the harsh words he used to dismiss me. It was my mother who offered me love and protection, taking on both parental roles to shield me from my father's harshness. 6 years later, my sister Emery was born. Though my father was initially disappointed once again at having another girl, his attitude towards Emery soon changed. He began to dote on her, showering her with praise and affection, while I remained largely ignored. As I progressed through elementary, middle, and high school, the contrast between his treatment of Emery and me became stark. Emery was celebrated for even the smallest achievements, while my father's only words for me were tinged with disappointment. Despite my mother's reassurances that Kayla is different from Emery, but she's very cute too, my self-esteem continued to suffer. When college came around, I decided to move out and live on my own. My relationship with my father had deteriorated to the point where I felt it was unbearable to remain under his roof. He grudgingly covered my college admission fee but made it clear that he would not contribute further, saying any available funds would be reserved for Emery. I had to rely on scholarships and part-time jobs to make ends meet. My college years were consumed by balancing studies and work, leaving no room for the typical college experience. My connection with my family dwindled, with only occasional calls from my mother and no communication from my father or Emery. During my job search after graduation, salary was my top priority. I needed to repay a portion of my scholarship and had learned the value of income from my part-time work. Thanks to a recommendation from a senior professor and my determination during interviews, I secured a position with my first-choice global consulting firm. My mother was ecstatic, as if my achievement were her own, but my father and Emery showed no reaction. While I had expected this, it still left me feeling isolated and unfulfilled. I threw myself into my work, channeling my frustrations into my career. This drive allowed me to excel quickly, impressing clients and securing contracts. As my success grew, so did my income, and I began to steadily climb the professional ladder. 5 years into my career, I had established myself as a trusted leader managing multiple projects. During this successful phase, I received an unexpected call from my father, whom I hadn't heard from in years. Your mother had an accident and is paralyzed on one side. I need you to come home and take care of her. I assume you've been loafing around, so here's your chance to do something useful. I was stunned to learn of my mother's accident and her dire condition. My father, having no idea about my job, had wrongly assumed I was unemployed and idle. Despite my reluctance to return home, my concern for my mother outweighed everything else. I quickly arranged to work remotely from my company, which fortunately supported telework. I decided to keep my apartment lease, even though it felt wasteful to pay for a place I wouldn't be using. Packing only the essentials, I headed back to my family home after nearly 9 years away. When I arrived, I found my mother's condition was worse than I'd imagined. She was paralyzed on one side and unable to walk. Though her mind and speech remained unaffected, her physical suffering was evident, and the sight of her in pain was heartbreaking. I confronted my father about why he hadn't informed me about the accident or the state of home care, but his response was as indifferent as ever, telling you wouldn't change anything. I called you now because I had no other choice. I was frustrated by his lack of concern and his failure to keep me informed about my mother's condition. The state of the house was appalling. Clothes were scattered everywhere, dishes were piled high in the sink, and dust and garbage were everywhere. My mother's care had been neglected, and she had developed painful bedsores. I had no expectations from my father, but Emery, who also lived there, should have been helping. When I asked Emery about it, she responded, "I can't do housework, so I can't take care of Mom either. I'm glad you're back." Emery, spoiled and self-centered, had become incapable of contributing to household chores. I began by tackling the mess, which had accumulated over several months. Cleaning the house took nearly a week, partly because I was also attending to my mother's needs. Despite her constant apologies for being a burden, I remained cheerful and energetic, hoping that my care would aid in her recovery. While I handled the housework and caregiving, neither my father nor Emery offered any assistance. Instead of helping, my father constantly complained, "The food tastes terrible. What are you doing? You're clumsy at taking care of your mother. You have all the time in the world, so do it right." To him, it was only natural for me to take on these responsibilities. Emery, on the other hand, would demand, "Kayla, wash my clothes. I need them for school tomorrow, and bring me some tea." I felt like a servant, especially with my father's unrelenting criticism, who believed I was merely a neat freak, although I was primarily focused on telework, housework, and caregiving. To him, it seemed I was just a reclusive homebody. Even though work required me to go to the office regularly, my father would sometimes greet me at the entrance with accusations. "You're just a shut-in, and yet you're out gallivanting. Take care of the house properly." His angry voice echoed through the house, while Emery added, "You're really useless, just out playing." Exhausted, I would return to my apartment for brief respites, tidying up my place before heading back. I was grateful for having kept that apartment, as it provided me a sanctuary from the unreasonable demands and harsh treatment that intensified each day. My father, who had berated me for not contributing enough, now demanded money. "You must have some savings. Even if you're a neat freak, contribute to the household." Emery's demands were no better. "I'm going on a day trip with my friends, so give me some money," she said. Despite doing nothing to help around the house, I felt like I was neither a daughter nor a sister to them. The days became increasingly painful. One time, Emery screamed, "My ring is missing. Kayla, do you know where it is?" I had no idea where her ring was and didn't care since our tastes differed. When I told her so, she stormed into my room. I was slow to react, but when I arrived, Emery was triumphantly declaring, "Look, I found the ring. Kayla stole it, didn't she?" She emerged from the room with the ring, pointing at me and shouting. I immediately realized this was a setup, an act of harassment for not giving her money. Emery quickly ran to my father, who had just arrived home. Stealing Emery's things? How pathetic. I don't remember raising a daughter who would steal. Despite my explanations, my father wouldn't believe me. Emery added, "We don't need a thief. Kayla, if it weren't for your care of our mother, I'd kick you out right now. Have some shame." And so, I was unfairly branded a thief. One evening during dinner, my father suddenly erupted in rage for reasons I couldn't understand. "You're useless, can't even manage the house properly, and the food you make is terrible, still not contributing money to the household. Do you think your job is enough? You're just a shut-in who runs around doing nothing. I've had enough. I'm going to destroy your precious toy." With that, he stormed towards my room. My toy was my computer, a crucial tool for my work. If it were destroyed, it would be a disaster. I rushed after him, protecting my computer as he reached to damage it. Emery watched from behind, smirking with satisfaction. As my mind and body neared their breaking point, my mother passed away peacefully. She had always been grateful for my care and distressed by how my father and Emery treated me. The loss drained my strength. My heart was so shattered that I couldn't even cry. My father and Emery, however, showed no tears, acting as though a mere inconvenience had been removed. Our lack of emotion stemmed from entirely different reasons. After a quiet funeral, my father summoned me to the living room. "Your mother's gone, and you're no longer needed here. I want you to leave immediately. We don't need a useless NEET who doesn't contribute to the household." I had anticipated something like this, but hearing it out loud was still shocking. I tried to assert my hard work, but my father was resolute. Emery chimed in. "Are you planning to stay here as a freeloader? You're like a parasite, a tick or a flea." The harsh words left me dizzy. "And about your mother's inheritance, you must renounce it. You're entitled to nothing." I hadn't given the inheritance much thought. The love I received from my mother was more valuable to me than any inheritance from my father or Emery. "I don't want it. I'll renounce it and leave," I replied. "Fine, leave right away." I requested one day to pack up and immediately began preparing to move out. The following day, my father said, "Ready to move? Hurry up. I'm leaving and want nothing more to do with this house or you. Goodbye." I loaded my packed belongings into a taxi I had arranged, reflecting on how few possessions I had. After 9 years away, returning to my parents' house and now leaving again felt final. The hollow reality of my father and Emery had been painful, but I was satisfied that I had been able to help my mother. Back in my apartment, I switched from telework to regular work and was grateful I had kept the place. My previous routine resumed, though now I worked even harder, trying to forget everything that had happened. About 3 months later, I received an unexpected call from my estranged father. Reluctantly, I answered the phone. "What's this promissory note? The amount is outrageous. Are you just a freeloader? How much are you earning every month?" My father's questions came rapid fire. I reassured him that I was far from being a freeloader. Thanks to my dedication to my job, my income was substantial, and I had accumulated significant savings. When I first began caring for my mother, I had invested in equipment to improve her environment and contributed to the household expenses to lighten her burden. Even before my father demanded money, I had been financially supporting my mother and even covered Emery's tuition to ease her worries. My mother, appreciative of my financial support, had insisted on formalizing it with a promissory note. This note, reflecting my considerable contributions, had effectively placed a financial obligation on my father and Emery, who had benefited from it, while I had renounced the inheritance. In essence, they were required to repay all the money I had given. After I explained everything, my father was left speechless. In his frustration, he declared he would renounce the inheritance too, but since they had already benefited from it, he had no legal grounds. "Work hard to repay what you owe and don't contact me again. I'm cutting ties with you." Ignoring his rants, I ended the call and blocked him. Soon after, my uncle, my mother's brother, caused further upheaval for my father and Emery. Having met him for the first time in years at my mother's funeral, I had shared my experiences with him. It turned out that the family home was owned by my uncle, and my mother had been renting it. The right to rent had passed to my father and Emery through inheritance, but my uncle refused to renew the lease. Legally, tenants have certain protections, but my uncle's influence prevailed. The family was forced to vacate the property. My father, already on his company's restructuring list, was eventually let go. Emery, unable to pay her tuition, had to drop out just before graduation. With no home or jobs, they ended up in a small apartment, with most of my father's retirement savings going towards repaying the debt to me. Finding new employment at his age seemed unlikely, and Emery's prospects as a college dropout were also dim. They were left struggling in their small, dark apartment. Meanwhile, I focused on my career, acquiring new clients and launching new projects. My hard work paid off, leading to my promotion as the first female division head in the company's history. Although it took time for the company to appoint its first female leader, I am dedicated to nurturing the next generation and making the company more inclusive. What's happening? No matter how hard I try, my apartment key won't work. I've just returned from a business trip, only to find myself locked out. I try calling Randy, who should be home, but there's no answer. Peering through a cracked window, I see that the apartment is empty. I'm certain I'm at the right place, so where is everything? Where did Randy go? Panicked, I head to my in-laws' house, and there's Randy. When I arrive, Randy looks at me and asks, "Who are you?" I'm stunned as Randy smirks at me with an unsettling sense of triumph. The situation is one I never could have anticipated. My name is Sharon, I'm 32, and I'm a working housewife living with Randy. We've been married for 3 years. Randy and I were once fierce competitors at work. Though he was a tough rival, he was also my greatest supporter. It wasn't long before we started dating, and we got engaged after a year. However, as we were about to register our marriage, Randy dropped a bombshell. "Sharon, I'm thinking of quitting my job after we get married." What? Why would you quit your job? I've been contemplating this for a while. I want to use my experience to start my own company. Your own company? Yes, I want to venture into something bigger. Please, let me try. His sincerity was palpable, but I was at a loss. I wanted to support Randy, but quitting his job to start a business seemed like a huge risk. We're married now, and I want to have children someday. Was it necessary to jeopardize our stable life? I couldn't voice my concerns to Randy. In the end, he quit his job right after our wedding and used all our savings to start a staffing agency. People say, "Wow, Randy's incredible." Aren't you proud? Your husband is a CEO. But I don't feel that way at all. My female colleagues, especially my good friend Marilyn, share my sentiments. Starting a business right after getting married is too risky. I agree, Marilyn. I wanted to object, but I couldn't. Be careful, Sharon. Randy tends to push things through on a whim. I've seen him make mistakes at work because of it. You'll need to keep a close watch. I will. I'll support him as much as I can. But the truth is, entrepreneurship is foreign to me. Why did Randy suddenly choose to start a staffing agency? Randy never gave me a clear answer. Though he was once competent at his job, his business ideas seemed to falter after he quit. The company struggled with high labor costs and minimal work. With so many staffing agencies available online, his face-to-face approach was ill-advised. Randy's business quickly ran out of funds, and employees started quitting. Eventually, he turned to me for help. Sharon, can you lend me $20,000? $20,000. Do you have any idea how much that is? I do, but I need it to pay the employees. That may be true, but it's not my problem. You're my wife. Are you saying it's not your problem? You committed to a lifetime together, didn't you? Yes. Then you should help me when I'm in trouble. Randy spoke as if he was in the right. I was at a loss for words, unable to meet his cold gaze. Over the next few days, Randy's demands grew, accompanied by insults like, "This is your fault. You didn't support me. You need to cover the shortfall." I faced daily beratings and even some physical aggression. I began to wonder if it was my fault. A year into our marriage, Randy's company was on the verge of bankruptcy. My savings had been drained, spent on propping up his failing business. Still, Randy refused to shut it down and instead turned to his parents for help. My father-in-law is an average office worker, and my mother-in-law is a homemaker. They don't have much to spare, but they couldn't ignore their desperate son. In the end, they mortgaged their house to lend him the money. I was horrified. Would any parent really risk their home for their child? My fears were realized when Randy's company went bankrupt within 6 months, leaving us with nothing but debt. After the bankruptcy, Randy seemed to lose all motivation. He began spending his days lounging around the house, and I couldn't stand it any longer. I confronted him several times. Randy, we're not exactly swimming in money. I've used up all my savings. Can you please find a job? What? How can you be so cold? I'm devastated after losing the company. This isn't the right time for that. We owe money to your parents. They'll be fine. Their house is the collateral. Do you even understand what that means? If this continues, they'll lose their home. It doesn't concern us. My parents are older now, maybe this will be their chance to finally be useful. I can't believe you're thinking like this. I never imagined you'd turn out to be so selfish. From that moment on, cracks began to appear in our marriage. It had been about 6 months since Randy's company went under, and he showed no inclination to find a job. He worked occasional day labor but spent all his earnings on himself. Meanwhile, I was scraping by, depleting my savings, and cutting corners just to make ends meet. One day, during a work break, my mother-in-law called. "Hi, Sharon. I'm sorry for the sudden call, but I need to talk to you." "Hello, mother-in-law. What's going on? Can you lend us some money? If we can't repay the loan by the end of the month, we'll lose our house." My worst fears seemed to be coming true. I told her, "Let me think about it. I've already spoken to Randy, but he said, I don't have any money. If you lose the house, so be it." "What? What are we going to do, Sharon?" "We'll lose our home. Calm down. I have an idea." After ending the call, I immediately reached out to my father. "Hey, Dad, it's Sharon. Oh, it's been a while. How are you?" "I'm okay, but there's a problem." "What happened?" "Randy's company went bankrupt, and now his parents might lose their house." "What? Why?" I went on to explain the entire situation. My father agreed to help us financially. Despite Randy's clear faults, my dad said, "He is the man you chose, and chose not to blame me." As a wealthy real estate investor, my father's rental income alone provides him with a significant amount of money. Growing up, I never had to worry about finances. It was only after I got married and became financially independent that I encountered money problems, thanks to Randy's mismanagement. I felt guilty accepting my father's help, but it was necessary to save my in-laws. I kept this aid a secret from Randy and transferred the money directly to my in-laws. Why didn't I tell Randy? I had only mentioned that my dad works in real estate. I feared that if Randy knew about my father's wealth, he would start making demands for money. If that happened, it would spell the end of our marriage. To avoid resentment and protect my parents and in-laws, I chose to keep my father's financial status a secret and continue my relationship with Randy. When I informed my mother-in-law about my father's help, she responded with relief, "Are you sure? You and your father have saved us. It's fine." I'd rather avoid any unnecessary drama, I assured her. "All right, if you say so, we'll repay the money, even if it takes time. Don't worry, I'll assist with that as well. Thank you, Sharon, you've been a lifesaver." Her voice trembled with gratitude over the phone. I was relieved to have been able to help her, despite the tough situation. However, Randy's behavior continued to deteriorate. He became increasingly absent from home and would dismiss my inquiries with, "None of your business," yet still demanded money for groceries. I had to leave for a 3-day business trip. Although I was anxious, I also felt a sense of relief. 3 days without dealing with Randy's presence. When I returned, my anticipation to get home was overshadowed by dread. As I tried to unlock the door, something felt off. The key wouldn't work no matter how many times I tried. Randy wasn't answering my calls. I seemed to be locked out. What if Randy wasn't home? I couldn't get inside. Peering through the peephole, I saw the apartment was empty. This couldn't be the wrong house. But where was my stuff? Where had Randy gone? Panicking, I forgot to call the management company and reached out to my parents instead, but they didn't answer. So, I decided to head to my in-laws' house, bringing the souvenir I had bought. When I arrived, Randy was there. "Randy, what are you doing here?" My mother-in-law spoke first. He showed up unexpectedly, asking to stay for a few days. "What? Randy, what's going on? I couldn't get into our apartment." Randy smirked and looked down at me. "Who are you?" "What?" I was stunned, but Randy's smirk remained. I managed to ask, "What are you talking about, Randy? What about the house keys? Isn't it clear? I've moved out. That house. Oh, and by the way, we're already divorced. I've got a new girlfriend now, so you should just leave." A new girlfriend? Shocked, my mind went blank as Randy shoved his phone screen in front of me. There he was, smiling and hugging a young woman. At that moment, everything felt meaningless, and I lost the ability to think clearly. Fine, whatever, this marriage was over a long time ago. I sank to the floor, feeling defeated, while Randy looked down at me with a smug grin. Suddenly, a loud smack echoed through the room. Randy was knocked to the ground by a slap from his mother. "What the, mother, what are you doing? What have you done, Randy? What do you mean, what have I done? I left a useless wife and now I'm planning to marry my new girlfriend." His mother's face turned a deep shade of red as she trembled with anger. "Randy, do you really not know?" "Know what?" "That you have this life because of Sharon." "What?" "When your business was failing and this house was on the brink of foreclosure, Sharon asked her father for a loan." "My father-in-law did what?" Randy's shock was palpable, clearly stunned by the revelation. His mother didn't hold back. "And yet you, how much more trouble do you need to cause before you're satisfied? Sharon even helped us with the repayments." "No way, Sharon did all that for me. You betrayed such a wonderful person. If you have time to dote on another woman, why don't you spend some time working? Aren't you ashamed of burdening your wife and parents at your age? You are no longer our son. Leave now, and you will be responsible for repaying all the debt yourself." "But Mom," tears streamed down Randy's face as he began to plead, clearly rattled by his mother's words. His father grabbed his arm and started to drag him away. Randy turned to me, desperation in his eyes. Sharon, I was wrong. Please, help me out here. Help you out? How? Just pay off my debt for now, and then we can start over as a couple, okay? You've already filed for divorce, haven't you? Well, we can reapply for a marriage license. I shot Randy a cold, steely glare. Then, to address all the past grievances, I firmly replied, don't be ridiculous. Reapply for a marriage license? How selfish can you be? I've worked tirelessly to support you, only to have you betray me, your own parents, and even have an affair. No, I won't do that. I'll break up with her. I don't care. Your apologies mean nothing now. I was a fool for ever trying to help you. Remarry your mistress if you want. But know this, I will never forgive you. I hope you struggle with your massive debt for the rest of your life. Sharon, wait, please, His pleas were abruptly cut off as his father-in-law forcibly ejected him from the house. We locked the door behind him, making it clear he was never welcome back. I then reached out to a lawyer to demand repayment for the money I had lent him, given the massive debt from Randy's failed business. The total amount was staggering. Randy's parents disowned him and removed him from their will, ensuring that he would inherit nothing if something happened to them. In the end, Randy lost not only his home but also his support network. Even his mistress grew tired of him and vanished. He got what he deserved. A man who lived solely for himself faced the consequences of his actions. As for me, I moved back in with my parents after the divorce. They are concerned for me, having just come out of a failed marriage. But honestly, I have no regrets. I have a stable job and a loving family who stands by me. That alone makes me feel truly blessed. From now on, I'm determined to live my life fully for the people who genuinely care about me. Listen, I'm letting this slide for now. Just come back, and I'll overlook it, at least this once. What on earth is this guy talking about? He must be completely clueless. It's time he got a taste of reality. My name is Olivia, and I'm 32. I've been married to Mason for a year now. We met at a casual get-together hosted by a friend, hit it off, started dating like any other couple, and eventually got married. We're not getting any younger, after all. Mason isn't the most thrilling person, but he brings a sense of calm to my life. I thought we'd grow old together, spending our days in peaceful contentment. We both work, so money's never been an issue. We didn't overthink our decision to get married, since we're both busy with work. I take care of most of the housework. Mason never pitches in. He's either lounging around or leaving early, rarely spending time at home. But I've never found the chores burdensome. My parents lived this way, so I accepted it as the life a wife would have. I have a 9-to-5 job, and I'm not overloaded with hobbies. Mason and I were never the chatty type. We respected each other's space, and it worked for us. Life went on. One night, Mason came home late, probably after drinks with coworkers or friends, who knows. I greeted him. Mason, you're home late. Had a long night. Dinner's still on the table. But I guess you're not eating this late, are you? He turned away, didn't say a word, and walked into the living room, ignoring me. I sighed. Here we go again. Whenever Mason's in a bad mood, he goes quiet. I figured something at work or during his night out must have upset him. It's best to leave him be. I know better than to push when he's like this. I felt his presence in the living room but shrugged it off and went to bed. He'll probably be back to his usual self by morning. It was a familiar pattern, so I didn't dwell on it. The next morning, while I was making breakfast, Mason came into the kitchen. Good morning, I said cheerfully. Mason glanced at me, grabbed some milk from the fridge, and left without a word. I was taken aback by his coldness. It wasn't like him. Seems like he's still in a bad mood. I never thought I'd see the day. I'm used to us being strong, independent people. I hadn't made it a habit to talk much to Mason. Really, I decided to wait it out, so I continued preparing our lunch boxes. But things didn't go back to normal as easily as I'd hoped. Mason stayed distant the next night and the night after that. I started to worry. Days turned into weeks, and Mason kept up the silent treatment. I tried reaching out through WhatsApp and left him notes, but he ignored everything. However, he did eat the meals I prepared. I noticed the empty lunch box in the sink, so I knew he ate the lunch I'd packed. I even put a note in the cooler bag, hoping he'd read it and respond. But that was another dead end. Mason said nothing. Before I knew it, over a month had passed in this strange silence. I felt helpless. I tried everything, but nothing seemed to work. Then, one evening, I decided to take a bold step. I deliberately didn't make dinner. Every evening, I'd come home and prepare a meal, but tonight I wanted to see how Mason, who had been ignoring me, would react if I didn't. When Mason came home, I pretended to watch TV in the living room. He walked in and looked intently at the dining table, where dinner usually waited, but tonight the table was bare. After staring at the empty table, Mason turned his gaze toward me. I held my breath, waiting for him to say something, but he just walked out of the room in complete silence. I heard the front door open and then slam shut. I was left stunned. Why is he ignoring me like this? I had no idea what was going on. Bewildered, I sat alone on the living room couch, trying to make sense of it all. The next morning, I woke up and went to the living room. Mason was already gone. Did he leave for work already? I wondered. My eyes fell on a note left on the table. As I read it, my heart sank and anger surged within me. It said, in messy handwriting, "Stop skipping out on your wifely duties." Something inside me snapped. That was it. I was done. Why should I keep bending over backward to please Mason? Is this how my life is supposed to be forever? We were never the clingy type, but this was unacceptable. And the silent treatment for the past month had been unbearable. I grabbed a pen and wrote next to Mason's scribble, "I'm going back to my parents' house." Then I quickly packed my things and left. My sudden arrival surprised my parents, but once I explained how Mason had been ignoring me for over a month without any explanation, they understood and welcomed me with open arms. It felt good to be in a place where I could actually talk to someone. For now, I decided to stay and see how Mason would react before figuring out my next move. The day I left, I didn't hear a word from Mason. Knowing him, he probably thought I was just trying to make a point and would continue to ignore me. Fine, let's see how long this standoff lasts. Days turned into weeks, and still, no call, no message, nothing. He didn't even bother to come by my parents' house. Before I knew it, half a year had passed, and Mason was nearly out of my mind. Then one day, as I was leaving my parents' house to go shopping, I saw him, Mason, standing there with a defiant, angry look on his face. I froze, completely caught off guard. He just stood there, glaring at me, still refusing to speak. Was this some kind of game to him? It was almost laughable how committed he was to this silent act. But then, as I stood there in shock, Mason tried to walk into my parents' house without a word. "Whoa, hold on there," I said, blocking his path. Mason looked at me, his face a mix of anger and disbelief, but he still didn't speak. I warned him, "Don't just walk in, or I'll call the police." Finally, after more than 6 months, Mason spoke, a snide smile creeping across his face. "Look at you, acting all tough. Since when do you think you can talk to me like that? Just because you're at your parents' house doesn't mean you can get all high and mighty." I remembered Mason being a bit rough around the edges, but not like this. As I was lost in thought, Mason suddenly exploded. "What the hell do you think you're doing? You disappear for half a year, living it up at your parents' place. Get a grip," he ranted on, spreading his arms wide as if he couldn't believe what was happening. "Look, I'm giving you a pass this time, okay? Just come back home. I'm willing to let it slide this time." His condescending tone was the last straw. I calmly replied, "I think you're mistaken. You and I are strangers now." Mason's face went blank, and then he turned beet red with rage. He started yelling again. "What the hell are you talking about? Are you out of your mind? We're married, aren't we? Stop playing games." His outburst was so intense it left me momentarily speechless. And he kept going. "I'm saying I'll forgive you this time, so stop fooling around and pack your things." At that moment, my own anger boiled over. He was talking like he was doing me a favor by forgiving me, as if I was the one in the wrong. The sheer arrogance of it infuriated me even more, and it was clear that Mason had no idea what had really happened in the last 6 months. Finally, I snapped at him, who was still yelling. "I received divorce papers from your mother, signed them, and already filed them with the court. So, we're not married anymore, got it? We're strangers now, total strangers, understand?" I emphasized the word strangers, and Mason's face went pale. He looked genuinely shocked. Here's what happened. About a month after I moved back in with my parents, my then mother-in-law, Helen, called and asked to meet me at a cafe near their house. We had never been close, and it had been a while since I'd last seen her. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, she handed me an envelope. "What's this?" I asked, tilting my head in confusion. "Open it, even you should be able to understand," she replied curtly. I opened the envelope and pulled out the document inside. It was a divorce petition, already signed and stamped by Mason. Stunned, I looked at Helen, whose eyes, so much like Mason's, were filled with disdain. As I put the petition back into the envelope, I asked, "So, is this Mason's doing? Did he say anything to you about this?" Helen let out an exaggerated sigh before answering. "Oh yes, he said plenty. Want to hear?" I smiled politely and replied, "Sure, go ahead." She didn't hold back. According to her, Mason had been bad-mouthing me for some time, claiming I was a useless, incompetent wife who had stopped doing any housework after we got married, that I'd quit my job and lazed around the house all day, and that whenever things didn't go my way, I'd run back to my parents like a spoiled child. As she spoke, Helen's gaze never wavered, and it was clear she believed every word of Mason's lies. I knew there was no point in arguing with her. When she finished, Helen asked, "So, what are you going to do? Not that I want to meddle, but you've been pretty awful, you know." By the time I walked out of that cafe, my mind was made up. I smiled at Helen and said, "If he wants a divorce, then that's exactly what he'll get." Helen gave me one last glare, slapped some money on the table for her coffee, and stormed out. I went straight back to my parents' house, signed the divorce papers, and submitted them to the court the very next day. As I explained all this to Mason, his face grew even paler. It seemed Helen had never told him about the divorce papers I'd filed, but honestly, I didn't care. I'd entrusted Helen with the signed documents, assuming Mason had wanted the same thing. When I finished telling my story, Mason blurted out in a panic, "No, you've got it all wrong. I only filled out those divorce papers to get my mom off my back. I never intended to submit them. They're invalid." He was either panicking or confused because he started making no sense. "Besides, you'll be the one who suffers if we divorce. Let's go to the court right now and have them withdrawn." I gave him a cold stare and tilted my head. Why would getting divorced be a problem for me? Suddenly, Mason grinned like he had figured something out. "Think about your age. At your age, with a divorce on your record, no one will want you. That's why I'm saying I'll take you back. I'm doing this for your benefit. Get it? We can pretend the divorce never happened, and you should be grateful." I couldn't help but roll my eyes at Mason's arrogance and delusion. "Listen, we're not kids. A divorce doesn't just get erased. And for the record, I'm already married to someone else." Mason's jaw dropped, and he went silent for a moment. "What? Really? Do you want me to repeat myself? I'm married to someone else." Mason, still in disbelief, suddenly started making a scene. "That's a lie. You're just trying to save face, aren't you? You're making up stories to get rid of me. You think you can fool me with such lies?" If he wanted to be a fool, that was his problem. As I wondered how to handle this, a presence appeared behind me, a man standing at the entrance, looking between Mason and me with a puzzled expression. Mason, taken aback by the sight of a stranger emerging from my parents' home, fell silent. The man tilted his head and asked, "Is something wrong?" Feeling awkward, I smiled and turned to Mason. "This is my husband, Noah." Noah greeted Mason with a slight, skeptical nod. Mason took a step back, his eyes widening as he took in Noah's imposing physique. It made sense. Noah was a former national rugby player. Overwhelmed by Noah's presence, Mason suddenly started making excuses. No, you've got it all wrong. My old boss told me you'd been married for about a year now, and he warned that your wife might get too comfortable, said I should keep her in check. So I did, and guess what? Turns out he got dumped by his wife and kids. What a fool, right? I was just doing what he told me to do. I never wanted to do any of that stuff. You understand, right, Olivia? I stared at Mason with disgust, completely fed up with his pathetic excuses. He looked puzzled, maybe because my reaction wasn't what he expected. Then Noah spoke up. "Sorry, but you need to leave and never come back here. If you approach Olivia again, I'll call the police." Noah firmly pushed Mason out of the doorway. Intimidated by Noah's force and determination, Mason fled. For a while, we stayed on alert, worried that Mason might try something irrational, but as days turned into weeks, we heard nothing from him. Eventually, Curiosity got the better of me, and I reached out to a mutual friend to ask about Mason. After some casual catching up, I asked about him, and our friend sighed before filling me in. Apparently, Mason had quit his job just a few days after showing up at my parents' house. The reason? Mason had always gone along with his boss, who had a reputation for harassing subordinates at work. It became a significant issue within the company. The boss was eventually resigned, a polite way of saying he was demoted to some remote, unheard of location. Mason was expected to be transferred as well, but out of pride, he quit instead. According to our friend, Mason is still jobless and struggling to find work. His arrogance has only made things worse. Even when recruiters offer him opportunities, he turns down interviews, believing they're beneath him. Word of his quitting eventually reached his mother, who, true to her extreme nature, disowned him. Now, he spends his days blaming everything on his old manager and drowning his sorrows in alcohol. At this rate, he'll ruin his health before he ever finds another job. It's a sad situation, and while I hope he finds a new partner to help him get back on track, that seems unlikely. We both chuckled as we hung up the phone, thinking about how Mason's life had taken such a downward spiral while mine had flourished. Thanks to him, I'm now living a peaceful life with Noah. Interestingly, Noah was actually a colleague of mine. When he heard about my divorce, he didn't waste any time pursuing me, although we started dating only 6 months after my divorce, which initially made me a bit hesitant. I was quickly drawn to his confident manner and kind personality. After we got married, Noah confessed that he had always had a crush on me and was heartbroken when I got married. I laughed and apologized for not noticing his feelings sooner. Noah is everything I never knew I needed. He helps me around the house, something I used to handle alone. Whenever we eat together, he always compliments my cooking with a smile, and it's these small gestures that fill me with joy, something I never expected. I guess I had become numb to such things after growing up with old-fashioned parents. Now, I'm living a truly happy life with Noah, who finds joy in the simplest moments. I'm confident that with him by my side, we'll enjoy a lifetime of happiness, all the way through our golden years. My name is Mary, and this year, I'm approaching my late 50s. I have 2 children. My eldest son, now a working adult, is planning to marry his longtime girlfriend soon. My daughter, the youngest, is currently in college. Despite her busy schedule, she seems to be thoroughly enjoying her university life. With my children growing up and becoming more independent, I'm nearing the end of my responsibilities as a mother. Having previously worked as a nurse, I'm considering returning to the caregiving profession. One day, I received shocking news. My father-in-law, Bob, had suffered a stroke. My husband, John, called to inform me, and I rushed to the hospital where Bob had been admitted. Bob has always been a gentle and earnest man, and he's shown me nothing but kindness as his daughter-in-law. However, I'd been worried about him lately, ever since his wife, Alice, passed away 3 years ago. Bob hasn't seemed himself. I would visit him occasionally, checking on his well-being, but I often noticed his energy was lacking. We had been inviting him out with the kids more often, hoping to lift his spirits. Just when I thought he was beginning to regain some vitality, the news of his stroke left me deeply unsettled. When I arrived at the hospital, Bob's daughter, Isabella, and her husband were already there, engaged in conversation. "Sorry I'm late. How's Bob doing?" I asked, still catching my breath as I approached Isabella. She noticed me and sighed, her irritation palpable. "You're late. We have somewhere to be, so can you take over from here?" she said curtly before briskly walking out. Isabella has always been distant, treating Bob with indifference and coldness, much like she did with Alice when she was alive. Despite their kindness, neither Bob nor Alice ever confronted her, and I believe that only contributed to Isabella's behavior. For now, I nervously paced the waiting area while Bob was presumably still in surgery. Not long after, John arrived at the hospital. "Mary, how's Dad?" he asked, his worry evident. Sweat trickled down his forehead, soaking through his dress shirt. When I shook my head, indicating I didn't have any updates, John's face went pale, and he dropped the bags he was carrying. No way," he muttered, his voice trembling. I quickly reassured him. "No, he's still in surgery. We don't know yet." John seemed to relax slightly, picking up the fallen bags and sinking into a chair. "Should we prepare ourselves?" he asked, his voice heavy with dread. I rushed to his side, placing a hand on his back. No, it's going to be okay. I wished I could offer more comforting words, but nothing else came to mind. A few hours later, the surgery was over, and a doctor called us into a small room to explain the situation. The surgery was successful. However, there will likely be some lasting effects, the doctor informed us. This meant Bob would need ongoing care. While I was relieved that Bob had made it through the surgery, I knew this would involve a discussion with Isabella and her husband. John and I decided to call Isabella to discuss the next steps. We agreed to meet at Bob's house while he was still in the hospital. As soon as we started the conversation, Isabella dropped a bombshell. I'm not going to look after him, she declared, leaving John and me in shock. Wait, if you're not going to take care of him, what are we supposed to do? I asked, my frustration bubbling over. I don't care, you two can handle it, my sister-in-law, Isabella, replied nonchalantly as she idly fiddled with her freshly manicured nails. Her husband, Tom, nodded in agreement, clearly backing her up. What about considering a nursing home? I suggested, trying to find a compromise. Isabella shot me a glare that could cut through steel. Are you serious? I'm not wasting money on that. This always happens when I try to help. Her tone was sharp, and her eyes had a menacing glint. Feeling like my opinion wasn't welcome, I fell silent. If a facility is out of the question and you both refuse to take care of him, what are we supposed to do? John asked, clearly as exasperated as I was. That's why I'm saying you should take care of him, Isabella said with a dismissive wave. I don't need some decrepit old man bringing down the vibe in my house. She giggled, but there was nothing funny about the situation. Even my usual patience wore thin. That's too much, even for you. He's your father, I retorted, unable to hold back my anger. I don't care, just because he's my father doesn't mean I'm obligated to look after him. Besides, he's John's father too. I've been saying all along that you two should handle it, she said with a shrug. Her cold indifference left me speechless. I would have loved to take care of him at home, but our house wasn't equipped for it. There were too many steps and uneven floors. If we took him in, we'd need to remodel the entire place, and that kind of renovation would cost a fortune, money we didn't have. Mary, don't you have a care worker certification? It should be easy for you to take care of Dad, right? Isabella said with a smug smile, as if she had found the perfect solution. I was at a loss for words, and I could see that John felt the same. Realizing we weren't going to get anywhere, we decided to leave and discuss things at home. What should we do? John asked once we were back, his voice heavy with worry. You were thinking about returning to caregiving work, John trailed off, clearly torn. That's okay, I wasn't completely set on it, so don't worry, I reassured him gently, trying to ease his burden. The real issue is the cost. I don't mind taking in your father, but our house would need significant renovations to make it safe for him, and medical equipment isn't cheap. You're right. I'd guess it could cost around $100,000, maybe more, to adjust the first floor for him to live on, John estimated, running a hand through his hair. We don't have that kind of money. Our daughter is still in college, we're still paying off the mortgage, and the thought of taking out a loan for renovations is overwhelming, I admitted. I hate to say this, but maybe we should consider a facility after all. The problem is whether we can even get him into one. The waiting lists are long. And the costs aren't small, and you know Isabella and her family won't help. It feels like there's no solution in sight, John sighed. We decided to talk to Bob and get his thoughts on the situation. I went to the hospital alone to see him. When I entered his room, I was relieved to find him looking much better. He greeted me with a warm smile, his strength slowly returning. Sorry for all the trouble. My father-in-law would say this every time I visited. Why would you say that? I brought you one of your favorite books today, I replied, trying to brighten his spirits. The doctor had explained that the stroke had paralyzed the right side of his body, making it impossible for him to move that side on his own. When he read, he would place the book on the table and use a heavy object to keep the pages from turning on their own. Ah, thank you, he said, taking the book and placing it by his pillow. Dad, I came today because I wanted to talk about something, about what happens next. My father-in-law smiled warmly at me. Oh, I know, I'll be fine in a nursing home. I've saved up for it, so you don't need to worry. Despite his reassuring words, I could see a flicker of loneliness in his eyes. Well, Dad, If you're okay with it, why not come live with us? I've worked in elderly care before, and I'm at home during the day, so I have time. John's there too. Let's all live together. The words spilled out of me as I saw the sadness in his expression. My father-in-law looked at me, surprised. That's a kind offer. He must have known deep down that returning to his own home wasn't an option anymore. The house where his daughter Isabella and her husband now lived didn't feel like his home anymore. I could only imagine how they would treat him as a burden if he went back, eventually pushing him into a nursing home. The thought filled me with sadness. I had intended to listen to his feelings first and then discuss the options, but my emotions got ahead of me. I felt a pang of guilt towards John, but I knew he would understand. Now, the challenge was figuring out how to manage his care before he was discharged. The biggest obstacle was the cost. I decided to consult Isabella again, so I headed home to discuss the situation with John. When he returned from work and I recounted the events from the hospital, he looked troubled but seemed to have expected it. He immediately called Isabella. The conversation between John and Isabella didn't go well. They argued on the phone, and John's tone grew increasingly sharp before he finally hung up with a sigh. John explained that Isabella had flatly refused to contribute any money, leaving us with no support from her. Faced with the reality of covering the costs ourselves, John and I started discussing how we would handle the expenses. Our house became a hub of activity as we talked about renovations, necessary care supplies, and home care logistics. When I told my father-in-law that he would be moving in with us after his discharge, he appeared both apologetic and relieved. "Mary, could you get the checkbook from that bag over there?" he asked during one of my visits. Curious about his request, I retrieved it and handed it to him. He opened the bank book and showed it to me. "I have some savings here. Can you and John use this?" He revealed an amount that took me by surprise, $10 million. My shock must have been visible because my father-in-law chuckled and said, "You and John will be taking care of me, right? I heard you're planning to get a new car and remodel the house. Will 10 million be enough for that?" 10 million. The number was staggering. I had no idea why my father-in-law had saved such a large sum, but after my mother-in-law passed away, he had focused on investments he had been studying. It turned out his investments had performed better than expected, and his savings had grown rapidly. He wasn't a big spender, so he had just continued saving. Even though remodeling the house or buying a new car wouldn't cost that much, I felt overwhelmed by the offer. I handed the bank book back to him, saying, "I can't accept this much, please use it for yourself." He insisted, offering the bank book back to me. "I can't use all this money, I'd rather give it to you and John, who are willing to take care of me." Caught in this ongoing negotiation, I declined again. I still can't accept so much. After thinking it over, my father-in-law proposed, "How about $1 million?" Seeing no end to the back and forth, I managed to persuade him to agree to a reduced sum of $100,000. He still seemed reluctant, but for now, it was a compromise. At that moment, Isabella walked in. Oblivious to the financial discussion we just had, I quickly returned my father-in-law's bank book to its place. Isabella noticed our hurried actions and, with a frown, asked, "What's going on?" Relieved she hadn't overheard our conversation, I explained that Isabella had come to bring some clothes for our father. After a brief chat, we both left the hospital room. On our way home, Isabella suddenly mentioned she had something to discuss and suggested we stop by a coffee shop. Her previous conversations had never been about anything positive, so I expected this one to be no different. Reluctantly, I agreed to her request, but it turned out to be a mistake. "I will take care of Dad," Isabella suddenly announced. "What?" I was caught off guard by her unexpected offer. By that point, we were already deep into preparations to accommodate my father-in-law, including starting renovations on our house. I was puzzled by her sudden change of heart. "So you won't have to visit the hospital starting tomorrow," she added. "No, visiting the hospital isn't connected to the caregiving responsibilities. There's no rule that says only the primary caregiver can visit," I said, skeptical of her motivations. I suggested we discuss this further at another time and left the cafe. When I shared the news with John at home, he seemed to make an immediate connection. She must have overheard about the savings. I had a hunch that was the case, John added. Otherwise, there's no way she would suddenly agree to caregiving, especially since she was so opposed to it before. I suspected that Isabella had learned about the money and was trying to position herself to benefit from it. She might even find a way to start spending it. But what should we do? I asked. I have an idea. Let her try it out, John suggested with a sly grin, clearly up to something. Although I was uneasy about his plan, I decided to go along with Isabella's offer for the time being. I informed my father-in-law that he wouldn't need to worry about finances and that Isabella would be taking over his care. His response was ambiguous, a vague expression that didn't clearly indicate whether he understood or not. With that, the conversation ended. After his discharge from the hospital, my father-in-law returned to his home in Nebraska, where Isabella lived. When I visited their house to inspect the conditions, I found it in a disappointing state. There had been no renovations, and it was unclear whether there were adequate caregiving supplies. I doubted whether proper care could be provided under such conditions. However, as this was Isabella's choice, I decided not to comment. 2 months later, Isabella called me in a panic. "Mary, I can't do this anymore. Please come over right now." Her frantic tone left me no choice but to rush to the house in Nebraska. When I arrived, the house was in disarray, and a foul odor permeated the air. As I tried to assess the situation, Isabella appeared, looking exhausted and disheveled. Dark circles under her eyes and an unsteady gait made it clear she was struggling. "Are you okay?" I asked, concerned. Isabella grabbed my hand and said, "Take that away." Initially, I didn't understand what she meant, but after calming her down and getting her to explain, it became clear she had underestimated the challenges of caregiving. She was overwhelmed by the responsibilities, which included assistance with walking, meals, and incontinence care, including dealing with diapers. She was struggling to manage the household and even take care of herself. I told Isabella that I couldn't make any decisions immediately and promised to get back to her as soon as possible. I took the matter home to discuss with John. 2 months is quite a feat, John remarked as he looked at the calendar, clearly having anticipated this. He suggested we go pick up my father-in-law on his next day off, and I agreed. A few days later, when we arrived at the family home in Nebraska, my father-in-law was packed and ready to leave. I felt a wave of relief that we could finally bring him home. As we were helping my father-in-law into the car, Isabella abruptly said, "I've endured 2 months of this, and since I used to live here too, I deserve at least $5 million. Her unexpected demand made me stop in my tracks. John was equally startled and turned to face her. Isabella maintained a smug expression, seemingly unbothered by the situation. "What are you talking about, Isabella? This is neither the time nor the place to discuss money, especially in front of Dad. He raised us. After all." John tried to reason with her, but his words had no effect. "I'm his daughter. It's only fair that I get paid," Isabella insisted. Her boldness left me questioning her sense of entitlement. "Enough, Isabella. This isn't the time for such discussions. And besides, you've already received money," my father-in-law interjected, looking both surprised and disappointed. "There's none left. Just give me the $5 million. What's so hard about that? If you're just going to fade away, you might as well make it worthwhile," Isabella continued, her audacity leaving me speechless. Even John, usually calm, was visibly furious, his face reddening as he glared at her. "John, it's all right. Isabella is speaking the truth," Bob, my father-in-law, said gently to try to calm his upset son. He then turned to Isabella with a stern look. "Isabella, you are no longer my child. Leave this house." His tone was cold and final. Isabella stood frozen in shock. What are you talking about? I'm your only daughter. I only have a son, and this kind and caring woman here is my daughter-in-law. I don't know you anymore. Take your foolish husband and leave." I had only ever seen Bob's softer side before, so his harshness was startling. His eyes were resolute, and even Isabella seemed subdued by his authority. "Well then, shall we go? We're counting on you to move forward," Bob said. His earlier icy demeanor softened as he smiled at me. John and I had no choice but to follow his lead. We drove home, leaving a stunned Isabella behind. Bob later arranged through his lawyer for a will that stipulated his inheritance would go solely to John, ensuring Isabella received nothing. Although the house became vacant with Isabella's departure, John and I were happy to move in, and Bob was pleased to oblige. Isabella and her husband moved into an apartment. They had evidently spent a significant portion of Bob's money even while he was in good health. Their extravagant spending had led them into debt, and now they struggled to pay it off daily. I believe this was the inevitable result for someone like Isabella, who failed to respect or repay her parent. While caregiving for Bob is challenging, my experience in the field makes it manageable, and we're able to maintain a good relationship. On a sunny holiday morning, a rare treat these days, I heard footsteps approaching the living room. It was Kevin and Elizabeth, dragging in a mountain of baggage, their breaths coming in heavy puffs. They exchanged sarcastic smiles when they saw me and dropped a bombshell. From today, we're moving in with you. If you don't like it, you can divorce me and leave. Ignoring my stunned silence, Kevin and the others began unpacking their things in the living room. Stella, looking apologetic, followed behind. I opened my mouth, barely able to speak. It's fine, but are you sure? I mean, Kevin's face went ashen at my words, and he bolted out of the house. A few minutes later, he called, his voice so loud it could be heard where Elizabeth stood. Are you kidding me? Why didn't you say anything? Oh, I thought I mentioned it before. After a brief pause, Kevin said, anyway, I'm coming back, and abruptly hung up. Elizabeth looked like she might faint from the shouting. I'm looking forward to Kevin coming back, I said, causing Elizabeth's shoulders to twitch in surprise. Brace yourself, the retaliation starts now. I'm Madison, a 45-year-old office worker. Last year, I was transferred to a busy department and have been overwhelmed ever since. I married Kevin when I was 40. We met at a company year-end party where Kevin was a guest, and as his hostess, we hit it off. Being from the same hometown, Kevin, 5 years my senior, was assertive and seemed like a godsend since I had almost given up on marriage. We married after a year of dating, opting out of a wedding ceremony, which left me a bit disheartened. Looking back, I wish I had reconsidered the marriage at that point. Hey, you slacked off on the laundry again, didn't you? Kevin is what you'd call a henpecked husband, though he managed household chores before our marriage. He claimed men shouldn't do housework, and that he'd planned to handle it tonight since he got home late from overtime. I replied, coming home to be yelled at only makes me more exhausted. Displeased with my response, Kevin's eyebrows shot up in anger. Don't talk back, wife. Who do you think provides the food you eat? Honestly, I earn more than Kevin. When we married, he was aware of this and chose a dual-income lifestyle. But after a year, it seemed he'd forgotten this arrangement. Initially, I argued back, but as Kevin's anger escalated, I found myself apologizing quickly to keep the peace. I'm sorry, it was my fault. Do you really think so? Yes, thank you. It's because of your hard work that we can live this life. Saying this would usually calm Kevin. He'd then hum a tune and head for a bath. At first, I found his henpecked behavior somewhat manly, but after 3 years, I was thoroughly fed up. Yet I hesitated to divorce because of my wonderful in-laws. I'd have lunch with my mother-in-law, Mia, once a month, and my father-in-law, Ricky, always gave me birthday gifts. Kevin was kind and cheerful when we visited them, making the time enjoyable. Since my own parents passed away early, my kind in-laws felt like real parents to me. That's why I hesitated to end the marriage. But there was one thing I couldn't tolerate. Elizabeth, Kevin's sister-in-law, who lived nearby, had divorced due to her infidelity and now lived alone in an apartment. Her affair had been the cause of the divorce, and ever since, I'd had a strong dislike for her. Elizabeth clearly felt the same way about me, often speaking ill of me in front of Kevin, who, unfortunately, indulged her complaints rather than addressing them. Elizabeth had a daughter, Stella, whose custody belonged to her ex-husband. Despite looking exactly like her mother, Stella was a delightful child. She visited Elizabeth about twice a month, and each time, Elizabeth would bring Stella to our house. Madison, can you feed Stella something nice? I'm heading out now. Huh, so suddenly, thanks, bye. Elizabeth would rattle off this one-sided request and leave without waiting for my response. Each time, Stella would apologize for her mother's abruptness. I couldn't ignore such a sweet, honest girl, so I ended up feeding her and taking her to various places. Madison, thank you for everything. It's okay, did you have fun? Yes, it was really fun. Can I come again? Of course. Stella would ask me this timidly while watching my face, and I couldn't say no to her. Besides, I didn't have children of my own, so I found Stella endearing. However, I thought it was unfair that Elizabeth, her mother, was never around during Stella's visits. I decided to bring it up with Kevin. Hey, whenever Stella comes, Elizabeth is never around. Can't she spend a little more time with her? I meant well for Stella, but Kevin took it the wrong way. His face turned red with anger as he shouted at me. Elizabeth is dealing with the pain of her divorce. Unlike you, she's fragile, and yet you're blaming her. No, it's not like that. I'm just wondering where she goes every time after dropping Stella off. There's no need for you to know. Just shut up and listen. I stopped trying to reason with Kevin, who refused to listen. After a few apologies, a visibly upset Kevin abruptly started preparing to leave. I'm heading out. Where are you going? It's my business. Just stay quiet and say, have a nice day. Kevin yelled this and slammed the door behind him. Alone in the quiet room, I cried and seriously began to consider divorce. Although I was contemplating it, I hadn't fully committed to the idea because of my in-laws. Amidst this turmoil, Mia invited me for lunch, and I decided to go out for the first time in a while. Where are you going on your day off? I'm going to lunch with Kevin's mom. With Mom? You better not mention Elizabeth. Why not? I asked, confused. Kevin shouted in irritation, can't you think a little? You really are stupid. Just go already and don't talk about Elizabeth. Without waiting for my reply, Kevin pushed me out of the house. Still unsettled, I met Mia and we talked over lunch. By the way, Elizabeth is coming over, right? You knew. I thought so. Mia sighed deeply and then apologized to me. Apparently, Stella had told her that she felt like a burden to me by coming to see her. I thought I raised her with strict discipline, but maybe it's just a reaction. She's into nightclubs. Nightclubs? That's right, and she seems to have accumulated quite a bit of debt. I was taken aback by Mia's revelation. Elizabeth always appeared well off whenever she visited our house, dressed in designer clothes. When I mentioned this to Mia, she looked even more troubled. That child. We've cut ties with her, so Madison, you should do the same. Kevin's probably still indulging her, isn't he? Mia explained that when Elizabeth's affair came to light, Kevin was deeply affected, even clinging to Elizabeth's ex-husband and paying off her debts. This was a real eye-opener for me. I'm thinking of divorcing Kevin. I'm sorry you're going through this, Mia said, holding my hand, but I'll support you. I thought about how my own mother would have reacted if she were alive and started planning the divorce carefully to avoid alerting Kevin. I tried to bring up Elizabeth's debts to make Kevin see reason, but he refused to listen. Faced with his constant yelling, I found my feelings for him fading. With the support of my in-laws, I gathered substantial evidence and uncovered startling truths. Then the day of action finally arrived. On a rare sunny holiday morning, I heard footsteps approaching the living room. It was Kevin and Elizabeth, weighed down with a mountain of luggage, panting from the effort. They exchanged sarcastic smiles when they saw me and dropped a bombshell. We're moving in with you starting today. If you don't like it, you can divorce me and leave. Ignoring my stunned silence, Kevin and the others began unpacking their things in the living room. Stella, looking apologetic, followed behind. I managed to say quietly, it's okay, but are you sure? I mean, Kevin turned pale at my words and dashed out of the house. A few minutes later, Kevin called. As soon as I answered, he began shouting so loudly that Elizabeth could hear him clearly. Are you kidding me? Why didn't you say anything? Oh, I thought I mentioned it before, I replied. After a pause, Kevin said, anyway, I'm coming back, and abruptly hung up. Elizabeth looked like she might faint from Kevin's shouting. I'm looking forward to Kevin coming back, I said, noticing Elizabeth's shoulders twitch with surprise. Brace yourself, the retaliation starts now. When Kevin returned, he confronted Elizabeth immediately. Elizabeth, what's this about debts? I didn't hear anything about this. It's just a small debt, Elizabeth replied, avoiding eye contact. I couldn't help but laugh. Elizabeth shot me a furious glare. Amazing, Elizabeth, calling $150,000 a small debt. I could never downplay such a huge amount. Rich people sure have a different perspective. $150,000. Elizabeth's face paled, and she looked as if she might cry. I had no intention of letting her off easy. I continued, you know, the guy from the nightclub, he recently got married, right? Elizabeth had let slip a crucial detail. I'm not dumped. Once I get this house, he'll come back to me, and when we sell it, the money. Elizabeth's plan had been inadvertently exposed. and she shot a guilty glance at Kevin. Kevin looked between me and Elizabeth, clearly confused. I decided it was time to reveal the full truth. Elizabeth planned to kick me out, then eventually you, and sell this house. She intended to use the money to pay off her debts and fund her nightclub guy. What the hell is this? Kevin was stunned. He couldn't believe his beloved sister was using him like this. Was it all a lie? I want to live with Stella, so let us stay. I was planning to support both you and Stella. Kevin's words made my head ache. He couldn't support his wife but was ready to support his sister and niece. Elizabeth defiantly shot back at Kevin. You're just an ATM, big brother. Once we sell the house, I can go back to him. Won't you listen to my request? ATM? What's that about? Kevin asked, puzzled. Ah, enough, Elizabeth said dismissively. Kevin and Elizabeth continued their heated argument, their exchange becoming increasingly ugly and ridiculous. It wasn't me who intervened, but Stella. Enough, both of you, Stella shouted. I don't want to live together. I only came today to say goodbye. Stella, what do you mean? Both Elizabeth and Kevin were shocked. Their fighting halted as they turned to look at Stella. Stella sighed deeply, met her mother's gaze with a cool, disdainful look, and began to speak slowly. Mom, you're not interested in my life, right? I think I told you before, but I'm going to study abroad starting high school, so today was just to say goodbye. I didn't hear anything about that, Elizabeth snapped, while Stella maintained her calm, disdainful stare. Because you never really listened, always chasing after men. I don't need a mom like that. Madison is my mom. Huh, what do you mean? Elizabeth glared at Stella with hostility, but I was equally surprised. Stella walked over to me and hugged me tightly. Thank you for holding my hand, for the delicious meals, and for listening and taking me places. You felt like a real mom. Stella's words filled me with warmth. I felt a profound sense of fulfillment and happiness, as if all my efforts for Stella had finally paid off. Having no children of my own, I often worried if I was doing things right with Stella, which made her words even more touching. Stella, I'm happy to have been with you too. Do your best over there, I said, wiping away my tears. Stella beamed at me. Yeah, I'd like to call and send messages. Is that okay? Of course, Stella. Stella and I exchanged smiles and laughter, while Elizabeth watched us with evident resentment. Then, with a smug look, she started laughing. Stella, I'll come with you. Why? It's difficult to live there alone, isn't it? Let's live together. They'll cover our living expenses, right? I was stunned by her audacity. Stella, standing beside me, looked equally appalled. Elizabeth, oblivious to our reactions, began to dream about their life abroad. Mom, while Stella's at school, we can go to the beach or shopping. When she's at her part-time job, I'll take a nap. At night, I'll go out a bit. Elizabeth talked only about leisure, with no mention of any work. Stella looked at her with disdain and suddenly burst into laughter. What's so funny? Elizabeth snapped. It's hilarious. Why would I want to live with you? Besides, I'll be in a dormitory, so you won't be able to come. Elizabeth's face flushed with anger, but Stella didn't stop there. Just as Elizabeth was about to lash out, there was an unexpected interruption. Enough already, Dad. Ricky's voice cut through the tension as he appeared in the living room, surprising Elizabeth. Mia was beside him, her expression a mix of anger and disappointment. I heard from Madison, and what do I find? How long will you keep causing trouble, Elizabeth? Mom, this is a misunderstanding. Stella decided this on her own. Elizabeth protested. Before Elizabeth could say more, Mia approached her and raised her hand. A sharp slap echoed through the room, followed by a stunned silence. Elizabeth was the first to speak. Is it really necessary to hit me? Mia responded sharply. You deserve it. I should have intervened sooner. We've arranged for you to stay with a relative. We're heading there now. Elizabeth's face turned pale as she looked to Kevin for support, but he avoided her gaze. Feeling betrayed, isolated and desperate, Elizabeth was led out of our house by Ricky. Hey, I'm sorry. I should have listened to Madison more. I promise I'll listen from now on, Kevin said. Mia shot him a cold look. That's a naive thought, she said bluntly. I warned you before not to involve yourself with Elizabeth, especially being married, but you didn't listen. Now, the only option is divorce. Kevin turned to me, his face pale. I offered him a small smile, feeling a bit relieved, and prepared to drop the bombshell. let's get a divorce. I'll also be seeking alimony for your verbal abuse and, let's see, possibly for infidelity too. Infidelity? What are you talking about? Kevin stammered, trying to sound clueless. I felt a pang of regret for once believing in his reliability. I pulled several photos from my bag. Do you recognize this woman? Did you take these secret photos? If someone is caught doing something they shouldn't, isn't it their fault? Kevin fell silent, clearly out of excuses, and looked visibly frustrated. I spread out the documents and had him sign them. Once everything was finalized, I addressed Kevin with a polite smile. Thank you for everything. Even though I earned more, did all the housework, and managed everything else, it was me who handled it all. So, take care, don't forget about the payments. Kevin had no more words. I bid farewell to Mia and left the house. I arranged to pick up my belongings later and checked into a nearby hotel. After dropping Stella off at her home, I finally felt free in a clean room with a soft bed and no one to complain. It was the freedom I had been craving after 5 years. The next day, I promptly filed for divorce and felt a true sense of liberation. Mia called to apologize and assured me that Kevin would deposit the alimony within a week, which he did. Since Kevin had little savings left after giving money to Elizabeth, the in-laws covered the alimony in advance. They assured me they would get Kevin to repay it in full, so I didn't need to worry. Kevin lost his job and was sent to live with another relative. He ended up working on a farm from dawn to dusk with no days off. The mountain roads were too challenging for him to navigate, given his lack of experience. It was tough, but I didn't feel sorry for him. Kevin's affair partner, a club girl who saw him only as a paying customer, apologized when I met her. She returned the branded bags he had given her, which I sold to fund lunches with Stella. Elizabeth was sent to live with relatives near the sea, where she worked tirelessly from sunrise every day. Her once well-groomed appearance had deteriorated. Apparently, she had fallen behind on child support payments for Stella, which her relatives had covered, leaving her to work unpaid. I hoped she might eventually change her ways. Meanwhile, Stella successfully went abroad and now lives in a dormitory. She has become close with her roommate, and I receive regular updates about their adventures. She plans to bring her friend for a visit during a long break, and I've agreed to host them for sightseeing. As for me, my days are still busy, but without the marriage, my chores are halved, and there's no one to complain. It's a different kind of busy, much more fulfilling. When I dropped Stella off, I met her dad, Elizabeth's ex-husband, for the first time. He's a nice guy, and we exchanged contacts to stay in touch about Stella. We've started spending time together, and I find peace in his company, something I never experienced with Kevin. Even I'm surprised by these feelings. Stella was thrilled to see him on a video call recently and asked, "When are you getting remarried?" I'm not thinking about it just yet, but if he feels the same way, maybe someday. To me, Stella is like a true daughter, and she feels the same about me. Becoming a real family would make me incredibly happy. With that hope in my heart, I headed into work today. Nick and Laura are coming back for the birth of their child at home, so you need to leave, Antonio declared, his voice ringing with finality. Leave me? I echoed, stunned. Antonio nodded with a smirk. I've always thought life would be better without you. I can't stand people who always have the right arguments like you do. There are other women out there. Just because we've been together for so long doesn't mean we have to stay together. Antonio's words were blunt. Whatever troubles he faces from now on are none of my concern. He might think a good night's sleep will make it all go away, but it won't this time. He needs to be accountable for his own words. I am Scarlett, 55 years old, living with my husband, Antonio, who is 60 and recently retired. He had mentioned wanting to spend his time enjoying his fishing hobby, and he seemed genuinely excited about it. Meanwhile, I run a small apparel company that's doing well enough to support us in a high-rent condominium. Antonio had been supportive, but after he retired, things changed. His routine shifted drastically, and he spent his days lounging around, staying up late, watching TV, or sleeping in. While occasional downtime is fine, his prolonged idleness was worrying. I suggested he should keep a regular schedule, especially at his age, but he brushed it off. I've worked hard all my life. Let me be. Don't tell me what to do, he snapped. Another issue was Antonio's growing boredom. With only a few friends and fishing as his sole hobby, he became increasingly idle and started nitpicking at my housekeeping. I'm not the best at domestic chores, relying on modern conveniences like a cleaning robot and electric cookers to manage. Antonio, however, preferred doing things manually and criticized my use of appliances. One evening, he complained about dinner. Stews need time and attention, not an electric cooker, he grumbled. Even though he hadn't minded before, his complaints grew more frequent and harsh, with comments like, "Stop being lazy, you're so sloppy." I'd try to accommodate him if I had the time, but with my busy work schedule, I couldn't. I suggested that if he had time, he could handle it. When I mentioned this, he retorted, "Just because you work doesn't mean you can act superior." I began to understand why some people divorce later in life, but I endured, remembering how hard we had worked together. However, things reached a boiling point with the announcement of our son Nick's wife, Laura, being pregnant. Nick isn't my biological son, he's Antonio's from a previous marriage, and we got married when Nick was 10. Antonio was thrilled about the pregnancy, it would be our first grandchild, while I was also excited. Antonio's over-the-top joy made me uneasy. I suspected Antonio was caught up in what I called grandparent fever. That's why things had escalated the way they did. Laura, raised by a single mother, had mentioned she wanted to give birth at home. Antonio, eager to ensure everything was perfect for the baby's arrival, threw himself into preparations with unrestrained enthusiasm. But instead of sharing the load, he imposed all the tasks on me, assembling the crib, stocking up on various types of milk, and buying an excessive amount of diapers. He barked orders at me while I was already overwhelmed with work and daily chores. When I tried to keep up, nothing seemed to meet his expectations. "No, not like that," he'd complain. No, that's not right. Enough already. I understand you're excited, but if you want it done your way, do it yourself. Stop relying on me for everything." His reaction to my resistance was one of shock. He stood frozen, hurt and frustrated. "Our first grandchild, and you act so detached. You're not biologically related to Nick, so you don't care about him." "That's not true," I snapped back. "Don't say such awful things. You're going overboard. If Laura knew how much you're doing, she might not even want to come here. This place doesn't feel relaxing at all." Antonio tried to respond but couldn't find the words. Frustrated, he retreated to his room. "Damn it, I didn't mean to go that far," I thought. His obsession had made me stubborn, and his harsh words about Nick had hurt. I wanted Nick and Laura to feel welcome here, so I needed to put a stop to Antonio's excesses. I considered apologizing later, but when I checked, Antonio remained locked in his room. Reluctantly, I left a note saying, "I'm sorry about yesterday, I'm heading to work." That day, work was a mess, and I got home late. I found myself wondering what to make for dinner. To my surprise, Antonio was already seated at the dining table, waiting. "I'm home, sorry for the delay. I'll get dinner ready as quickly as I can," I said. Antonio didn't respond. I hurriedly prepared crispy fish sandwiches and served them. "Sorry for the wait, let's eat." Antonio started eating silently, finishing his sandwich before I'd even halfway through mine. He then sat up straight and looked at me. "What?" I asked, feeling uneasy. Antonio spoke quietly but firmly. "You're all about work and neglecting housework." "What?" His unexpected comment nearly made me drop my sandwich. "I'm not neglecting anything. Don't act like it's nothing. Today's meal was just sandwiches because you were so eager to eat." Antonio wasn't convinced. "It's not just that. You always dismiss everything I say or do. You must think you're superior just because you're working and I'm retired." "That's not how I see it at all," I insisted. Despite my repeated denials, Antonio remained unconvinced. I was growing tired of the argument. "Let's end this. We'll be welcoming Nick and Laura soon. I don't want to greet them with this tension." Antonio sneered sarcastically. "I've been thinking the same. I found a solution." "A solution?" I asked, puzzled. Antonio declared loudly, "Nick and Laura are coming back for the birth, so you should leave." "What?" I was stunned, unable to believe he was serious. "Leave me?" I asked again, my voice trembling. Antonio nodded with a smirk. "If you weren't here, everything would run more smoothly. I've always thought so. I can't stand people like you who argue with logic. There are plenty of other women." I was stunned. After decades of marriage, hearing such words was unimaginable. Antonio, carried away by his anger, continued to vent his frustrations. "You lack respect for me as your husband. You're always complaining and never just listening. I try to respect your requests as much as I can, It's you who makes unreasonable demands, I countered. Oh, shut up. I hate your bossy tone. Just leave. I don't even want to see your face. Antonio slammed his hand on the table. It was clear that further discussion would be pointless. Understood, I said, and went back to my room. The next morning, I called a moving company. After being treated like that, I had no intention of staying. Fortunately, it wasn't moving season, so I managed to schedule an estimate quickly. I hoped to complete the move while Antonio was out, but he was usually home. I worried about the timing until fate seemed to intervene. I'm going out tomorrow for a bit, Antonio announced. He had been invited by his fishing buddies for an overnight trip. This was my opportunity. There was an awkward tension between us. Maybe Antonio sensed that his words from yesterday were too harsh. Still, he didn't offer any apology, possibly hoping to act as if nothing had happened. He's always been like that. I've usually let things slide, but I couldn't ignore what he said this time. The moving estimate was arranged swiftly. I planned to take all the furniture and appliances with me, but it turned out I had less to move than I expected. The bigger challenge was finding a new place, but that was quickly resolved. A work acquaintance offered me a brand new place to stay. Are you sure? I asked, still uncertain. They assured me, Scarlett, you've been so helpful. So, I accepted the offer. I visited the property, and it was perfect, more than adequate for my needs. I managed to move everything out while Antonio was away. His harsh words had left me feeling resolute, and perhaps, deep down, I had grown weary of life with him. That night, after I'd moved, Antonio called. Here it comes, I thought, picking up the phone. Hello. Hey, Scarlett, what's going on? Antonio's voice was tinged with panic. I almost laughed but kept my tone steady. What do you mean? My house, it's empty. What happened? Well, you told me to leave, so I did. I took everything, from the latest appliances to my favorite dining table. But I only told you to leave. It's insane to take everything. Leaving them behind would have been crazy. I bought all of that with my own money. You never contributed, saying you didn't need them. Antonio was silent for a moment, then grudgingly said, Fine, Nick and his family are coming tomorrow. Furniture doesn't matter. He'd be surprised when he saw the place now. Good, perfect timing then. Say hi to Nick for me. I didn't see the point in continuing the conversation, so I ended the call quickly. There was another significant matter, but Antonio seemed unaware, so I left it unsaid. The next day, Nick called. We'll be there soon. Didn't Antonio tell you I've moved out? Really? Nick sounded surprised but not particularly shocked. In fact, he seemed more relieved than anything. Great, Mom's not there, so we can do what we want. You're not coming back, right? That's right. I'd always sensed that Nick found me bothersome. He didn't seem pleased with me, perhaps because I didn't pamper him the way a biological mother might have. You're not as kind as other women, he'd said as a child. I'd tried to raise him with love and support, hoping to prepare him for life. Well, it's easier for both of us. Laura's uncomfortable too. See you. That remark was just like his father, always adding unnecessary comments. After hanging up, I reflected on this. I felt a bit unsettled that day, struggling to focus on work. I half expected a call about the furniture and appliances. As Laura had once remarked on how nice it must be to have all these conveniences, I suspected their visit might have been to take advantage of that, but contrary to my expectations, no call came. By the end of the month, Antonio called again. Ah, Scarlett. His tone lacked confidence, making his purpose clear, but I pretended not to understand. Yes? It's about the rent. Yes, what about it? Antonio hesitated, clearly uncomfortable discussing it. We used to split the $1,700 condo rent, but I was the one who paid it all. With Antonio now retired, it was unlikely he could afford it long term. He might manage for a while with his retirement fund, but it wouldn't last forever. I waited for him to speak up. What? You're not expecting me to pay for the rent on a condo I don't even live in, are you? No, that's not. You were the one who insisted I leave, right? And now you're coming back to me. Antonio's pride wouldn't let him admit that he was asking for help. True to form, he changed the subject. Scarlett, how are you managing? You know, with finding a place to live. Yes, thanks to some connections. I found a place and I'm living comfortably. I wanted to make it clear that I wasn't considering returning. Still, I kept my tone neutral just in case. Oh, okay. Nick and Laura mentioned they miss you. I thought maybe you'd consider coming back. Antonio's words were out of character. He must be really desperate, but I had no intention of going back. Oh, really? I thought they didn't like me. No, that's not. Well, it doesn't matter. I have something important to discuss, so I'll come over. Okay. Antonio seemed relieved, and his response was overly enthusiastic. I had a crucial matter to address for my future. Later, I visited the condo for the first time in a while. Long time no see, Antonio said, dressed up as if it made a difference. I walked down the hall to the living room, where Nick and Laura were sitting. The place had been furnished with new sofas, tables, and a fridge. Nick waved casually, while Laura gave me a sharp look. The atmosphere was tense. I wanted to get to the point and leave quickly. I took a seat as Antonio gestured for me to. So, what did you want to talk about? I was relieved he brought it up. It was better to deal with these matters sooner rather than later. Antonio's face went pale when he saw the divorce papers I held out. You're planning to divorce me? He was visibly shaken. Yes, ever since you told me to leave, I've been planning this. Did you really say that without thinking? Antonio fell silent. It was clear he'd spoken in the heat of the moment, as he often did, which had caused him trouble at work before. When you said all those terrible things, I don't want to see your face. There are other women, and more, I couldn't see a future with you anymore. Antonio kept his head down, clearly embarrassed and sweating. Yeah, I said those things, but that's not really what I meant. You can't just say things like that and expect them to be forgotten. I'm appalled. Well, it doesn't matter to me anymore. I was taken aback by his indifference. I can't continue this, that's all there is to it. Antonio flinched as our eyes met, quickly looking away. Can't you reconsider? We've been through so much together. I've endured a lot only to be told such things. I can't stay with you anymore. Antonio sighed deeply, and a heavy silence filled the room. Surprisingly, it was Laura who finally broke the silence. Excuse me, but I'm the one who's been most inconvenienced here. I turned to Laura, who glared at me with clear resentment. What do you mean? I expected this place to be perfect with you around, clean and filled with the latest appliances. I came here hoping for some pampering, but instead, I'm caught up in this marital mess. It's incredibly frustrating. Laura sighed heavily, her frustration evident. She seemed upset that I wasn't meeting her princess-like expectations. That's a huge misunderstanding. If you're unhappy, you could go back to your own home or anywhere else, but you chose to stay here. Laura's face turned red with anger. What's with that attitude? I came all the way here for you. I never asked you to come. Laura's anger boiled over, and she was on the verge of screaming. Her heavy breathing indicated just how upset she was. But this is absurd. I had such high hopes after talking to Antonio, and now this. It's too much. Laura finally burst into tears. Nick tried to comfort her, but it felt pointless. Antonio's excessive excitement about becoming a grandparent had clearly been driven by Laura's expectations. He'd gotten carried away, but that didn't change the situation. Laura was inconsolable, and Antonio remained frozen, sweating. There's no point in staying here. I'm leaving. We'll settle the divorce through lawyers. As I stood up, Nick shouted, "You're just running away, avoiding your responsibilities and causing trouble." I was stunned by his audacity. Is holding a grudge so important to you? I approached Nick, who was seated close to Laura, and found myself looking down at him. What's the issue? How old do you think you are? I'm 35 years old. I took a deep breath and glared at him. So what responsibility do you think I have? To take care of a 35-year-old son and his wife or a 60-year-old husband? Nick was left speechless, his eyes wide. I couldn't hold back any longer. You're all adults. Enough is enough. Who's really causing trouble here? Using my efforts as a stepping stone while expecting me to always smile and comply? Oh, calm down, Mom, don't act like a child. I shouted until I was out of breath, then paused to catch my breath. At least, Nick, I always cared for you and raised you as my own, but maybe I didn't show it as well as I thought. Nick started to say something but fell silent. I grabbed my things and left the room quickly, and no one followed. Later, Antonio agreed to the divorce without asking for alimony and mentioned he'd be moving out since he couldn't afford the condo. Antonio had never done housework before, so living alone would be challenging for him. The divorce letter I received from him, written in his familiar handwriting, simply said, "Thank you for everything." He tried to reconcile, but I firmly refused, and he seemed depressed. Nick and Laura decided to return to Laura's family home. Laura complained, but Nick persuaded her to go. After the divorce, Nick called once. "I'm sorry for everything. I'll try to be a parent like you," he said shyly. Maybe Nick hadn't hated me as much as I'd thought. I ended up buying the new house I was renting and still live there. Work is going well, though I was tired right after the divorce. I now feel refreshed. It's nice not having to take care of anyone. I'm not sure how many years I have left to work, but I'll do my best while enjoying my private life. And secretly, I still wish for Nick's happiness. I'm Alvina, a 34-year-old stay-at-home mom, living with my husband, Morris, and our 2 elementary school-aged daughters. We share a property with my in-laws, making us a household of 6. Before we got married, I used to work night shifts, but Morris suggested I quit, saying, "I'd rather you stop working if it means we won't see each other as much." So, I left my job and dedicated myself to raising our children, later picking up part-time work once things became more manageable. Initially, I wasn't thrilled about the idea of living with my in-laws. At the time, I didn't really know what kind of people they were, and regardless of how nice they seemed, I knew living with in-laws could be stressful. So, when Morris assured me before our marriage that we wouldn't have to live with his parents, I felt relieved. But shortly after we got married, Morris brought up the idea of living on the same property as his parents, saying, "I'm worried about them. What if we lived on the same property? We wouldn't be in the same house." I was taken aback and voiced my concerns, but Morris countered, "Do you dislike my parents that much? We'd be living separately, just close enough to help if needed. If our situations were reversed, wouldn't you want to live with your parents?" His argument left me without much to say. My parents were still healthy, living with my brother and his wife, so I had no reason to suggest living with them. Perhaps that's why Morris felt comfortable saying, if it were the other way around, I'd live with them, even though I hadn't fully agreed. Morris soon informed me, "My parents have already started building a house on our property. There's no turning back now." And just like that, we were committed to this arrangement. Although I was unhappy about the situation, I managed to set one condition: we wouldn't interfere in each other's lives. Thus, our shared property living arrangement began. My in-laws respected the agreement, and we led mostly separate lives, with me joining them for meals once or twice a week. The house they built on our property was beautiful, and I even started to think that this might have been a lucky turn of events since we would eventually inherit it. However, I soon realized that was a big mistake. My mother-in-law gradually began to break our initial agreement. At first, her requests seemed reasonable. She would stop by once or twice a week and ask for help with things like, "My back is hurting a bit, could you carry this?" Or, "I'm not feeling well today, could you prepare dinner?" These seemed fair enough, so I didn't mind helping. But as time went on, her requests turned into demands, like, "Is breakfast ready yet?" and "Why hasn't our part of the house been cleaned?" She started acting as if it was my responsibility to handle all the housework. Before I knew it, I was cooking all 3 meals and cleaning not just our house, but theirs as well. Morris didn't say anything about this. Only my father-in-law would occasionally apologize, saying, "Sorry for always asking you to do this." Sometimes he would offer me snacks, saying, "I know it's not much, but please enjoy this." My mother-in-law's interference didn't stop at housework. She also began meddling in how we raised our children. She'd say things like, "They should take these lessons," or criticize, "It's strange that your 2 girls don't help with housework. What did you have 2 girls for?" Yet, whenever she lashed out, my father-in-law would step in to defend me. "Remember, we agreed to manage our respective homes," he would remind her. She'd then offer a surface-level apology, saying, "Oh, right, I forgot. I guess I'm just feeling weak and unwell, so I might have leaned on you too much. I'm sorry." But as soon as my father-in-law wasn't around, the harassment would start again. When I tried to talk to Morris about how this wasn't what we agreed on, he brushed it off, saying, "Even if you made an agreement at first, we're family, aren't we? We should be flexible when times get tough. It's your fault for not handling it well." I spent my days increasingly frustrated. Then, out of the blue, my mother-in-law collapsed at home. We called an ambulance, but she passed away from a sudden seizure. I couldn't bring myself to say it aloud, but part of me felt relieved that the harassment was finally over. Despite her constant interference, my father-in-law had always been kind to me, and I felt differently towards him. I did my best to care for him after her passing. He would often thank me, saying, "I'm sorry for breaking our agreement not to interfere. I just can't manage the housework on my own. Thank you so much." Our daughters adored their gentle grandfather, and we finally began to spend many peaceful days together. But sadly, this peace was short-lived. Just a few months after my mother-in-law's passing, my father-in-law suddenly collapsed as well. Although he survived, he was left bedridden and in need of constant care. During a discussion about his care, my father-in-law expressed his desire to go to a nursing home to avoid being a burden, but Morris immediately stepped in, saying, "Don't say that, Dad. Family is supposed to take care of each other. Nursing homes are only for when there's no other option. Alvina said she's okay with taking care of you," he added, catching me completely off guard. I did care deeply for my father-in-law, and I wanted to help him in any way I could, even if he went to a nursing home. I had planned to visit him often, but providing full-time care at home was a completely different challenge. It was clear that Morris wouldn't be helping, and as a stay-at-home mom with young children to look after, taking on the responsibility of caring for my father-in-law would be overwhelming. However, I couldn't express my hesitation in front of him. He was not like my mother-in-law. With no real choice, I agreed to take on his care. As I feared, caregiving was incredibly demanding. I had to assist him with meals, bathroom visits, and bathing. My father-in-law was still a strong man, and being of the opposite sex, there were moments of discomfort for both of us. My daily routine became a never-ending cycle of preparing the kids for school, doing housework, caring for my father-in-law, managing the kids after school, and preparing dinner. By the end of each day, I would collapse into bed, thinking, I somehow made it through another day. Morris, instead of offering any help with his father's care, started spending even less time at home, using work as an excuse. He claimed to have overnight shifts and only returned home 2 or 3 times a week. On top of that, because I never knew when he'd actually come home, I struggled to have dinner ready at the right time. On days when I was too exhausted to cook anything elaborate, I would prepare something simple. But even then, Morris would rage, "I'm working my tail off, and this is the thanks I get." When I asked for a little help around the house or with caring for his father, he snapped, "You're a full-time homemaker, aren't you? Taking care of my father is your job." Every day felt like a struggle. This distressing situation dragged on for 3 long years. As my 2 daughters grew older, they began to help with the housework and caring for their grandfather, which eased some of the burden. Chantel helped daily with cooking and cleaning, while Janie would tenderly wipe her grandfather's back, asking, "Does that feel good, Grandpa?" I was incredibly grateful to have such compassionate daughters. One day, Morris accidentally left his mobile phone at home when he went to work. Despite knowing it was wrong, I couldn't resist the urge to look through it. His password was his birthday, so I unlocked it easily. What I discovered was a series of devastating revelations. Unbelievably, Morris had been having an affair since around the time I started caring for his father, and they even had a child together. From their text messages, it became clear that Morris was also financially supporting his mistress. Despite telling me he was saving money for our children's future, he hadn't saved a dime. The messages got even worse. "My kid's already in elementary school, so he's not cute anymore, and caring for the old man is a pain. But thank God for my idiot wife. It's a waste of money to put him in a care facility, but having my wife do it is free. Gotta make use of free labor, right? LOL. He was mocking me and our children behind our backs." Under normal circumstances, I would have stayed calm and gathered solid evidence before confronting him, but I was too furious to keep my composure. The moment Morris stepped out of the bath, I shoved his phone in his face and demanded, "What is this about?" At first, Morris looked a bit startled, but he quickly regained his composure. "You've lost your femininity since having our kids," he said, his voice dripping with scorn. "You stopped wearing makeup, and your clothes are all about comfort. Ever since you started breastfeeding our second child and falling asleep with your mouth open, I felt completely turned off. Then, when you began taking care of my dad, you lost even more of your femininity. You're not even a middle-aged woman anymore, you're more like a middle-aged man." His cruel words cut deep, but he didn't stop there. "You know, My girlfriend always wears makeup and takes care of her appearance, even after having a child. He continued coldly. I have no intention of divorcing you, for appearance's sake, but my love is with her and our child. I don't know who will go first, but once my dad passes and our kids are grown, I plan to kick you out and live in this house with her. He kept spewing venom, making it clear he saw me as nothing more than trash. Even though he pretended to care about the children, I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. I want to dress up and wear makeup too, but you never helped with the kids or the housework. I had to manage everything on my own, juggling unfamiliar childcare and trying to keep the house in order. I did my best, even if it meant my hair got messy. If you wanted me to look beautiful, why didn't you help with the housework, the kids, or even caring for your father? Shouldn't a husband and father naturally step in and help? I pleaded through my tears, but my words fell on deaf ears. That's not true. Look at other women. They stay beautiful while raising their kids. Like I've told you many times, it's just that you're not efficient. You're a stay-at-home mom, so you have no right to argue with me, the one who's putting food on the table. He retorted coldly. If you're so unhappy, you can always divorce me. But for a woman in her mid-30s like you, job opportunities are scarce, aren't they? Do you really think you can raise our 2 kids just because you'll get a bit of alimony and child support from me? He sneered. I was struck so deeply by his words that I couldn't muster a response. The thought of my children held me back from considering divorce. Seeing my hesitation, Morris smirked and said, You can't, can you? If you care about the kids, you'll take care of my father until the end. After that, you can continue as my housekeeper. Don't worry, when the kids are older, they'll help you out, so you'd better treat them well. He then retreated to his room, looking smug. I stood there, stunned and unable to move. Eventually, I gathered myself and went to care for my father-in-law. I tried to act as if nothing was wrong, but he noticed. Is something bothering you? He asked. I tried to dismiss it, saying, No, nothing at all, but I couldn't hold back my tears, and everything came pouring out. After listening, he said, Alvina, I have something for you. Can you come back in a few hours? I did as he asked, and when I returned, he handed me a piece of paper with contact information on it. Get in touch with this person, he said. They know everything. I should be the one taking action, but given my condition, he smiled warmly despite everything. A few days later, Morris announced, as I mentioned before, I'll be on a business trip for a week. Although, for your sake, let's just call it a business trip, okay? I saw this as my chance to take action. A week later, Morris called me, furious and frantic. What the hell is going on? I come home, and everything is gone. Oh my, how was your week-long affair? Did you enjoy it? I replied coolly. Stop messing around. I'm asking what happened, he shouted. I calmly explained. The contact my father-in-law had given me was for Mr. Corey, an old friend of his and a prominent landowner in the area. Mr. Corey had always been interested in the land where my in-laws' house stood and had repeatedly tried to buy it. But my father-in-law had always refused, saying, I plan to leave it to my son. However, after seeing Morris's behavior and hearing my story, he decided his son wasn't worthy of the inheritance. We knew in advance that Morris was planning this business trip because he didn't bother to hide his affair. Before he left, I met with Mr. Corey, and we arranged to sell the house and land. Mr. Corey had coveted the property for years, so he was willing to pay well above market value. During the week Morris was away, the house was demolished. My father-in-law had asked Mr. Corey, given the circumstances, could you have the demolition done during that week? So when Morris returned, all he found was an empty lot. And with the money from selling the old house and land, we're going to build a new house, I said. Morris, looking worried, tried to reason with me. But you're jobless, aren't you? Even if Dad builds a house, you can't expect to be supported forever. What will you do without my income? It's going to be tough, right? I responded calmly. Don't worry about that. I had some concerns, but my father-in-law and Mr. Corey have made significant arrangements. I've even received a job offer from a company run by an acquaintance who's looking to hire. So, I'm not as helpless as you might think. Then I asked, shouldn't you be more concerned about yourself? Morris, puzzled, asked, what do you mean? I explained. The company where you work got you your job because the president is a friend of your father's. But now that your father has severed ties with you, he's informed the president. He said, if his work is poor and he's committing adultery, feel free to fire him. The president responded. It's been difficult to address, but he's been acting as if he can't be fired and causing trouble. Let's see how things go starting tomorrow. On the other end of the line, all I heard was a stunned, "What?" followed by silence. Morris then tried to excuse himself, saying, "Well, I might have said some things out of anger, like planning to leave you in the future, but that can't be true. Don't take it seriously. We're family. We should stick together. Can't you help mediate between me and Dad?" I replied firmly, "My family now is my daughters and my father-in-law. Goodbye," and hung up. Morris made several attempts to call me afterward, but I ignored them all. Eventually, my divorce from Morris was finalized. I pursued compensation from both Morris and his mistress, armed with ample evidence of his affair. Given that Morris hadn't tried to conceal his infidelity, I was able to gather information from various sources, including the president of Morris's company, who was a friend of my father-in-law. Surprisingly, Morris's affair wasn't the only issue. He was also caught embezzling company funds to support his double life. As a result, he was not only fired but also faced a lawsuit for damages. He lost his job and home, and his mistress abandoned him once she realized he had no money. To make matters worse, he's now responsible for paying child support. Morris now spends his days job hunting and working multiple part-time jobs to cover his debts and child support obligations. As for me, I'm living with my daughters and father-in-law in a rented house until we can move into the new home that my father-in-law is building for us. When he offered to build the house, he said, "I'm moving into a care facility. I want you and your daughters to be happy here." "Alvina," I replied, "what are you talking about, Dad? We're family. Besides, it would make the girls sad. Let's live together." Touched by this, my daughters joined in, saying, "We want to live with Grandpa." With tears in his eyes, my father-in-law expressed his gratitude. While the girls help out, balancing caregiving with work is challenging. We are currently enjoying our life as a family of 4 with the assistance of home aides and day services. We look forward to moving into our new home and starting this new chapter together.